Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
शुरू अल्लाह का नाम लेकर जो बड़ा मेहरबान निहायत रहम वाला है।
इन्ना अअतैनाकल कौसर।
ए नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम, हमने तुमको कौसर यानी बहुत ज्यादा भलाई अता फरमाई है।
फसल्लि लिरब्बिक वन्हर।
तो अपने परवरदिगार के लिए नमाज पढ़ा करो और कुर्बानी किया करो।
इन्न शानिअक हुवल अबतर।
कुछ शक नहीं कि तुम्हारा दुश्मन ही बेनाम रहेगा।
Jazakallah. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning to all of you. On behalf of India Study Center, I welcome you all at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are well aware, this year Pakistan and India had a 87 hours long conflict, which was ended with a ceasefire brokered by US. Soon after the conflict, since May 6th till today, if you look at the scholarship that has produced reports, detailed essays, documentaries, and even a book, they have covered significant areas, a wide range of areas of international relations, strategic studies, and peace and conflict studies. So total, there are 231 reports, manuscripts, monographs, detailed reports, essays, and visual documentaries have been published so far. And I'm referring to only the top-notch think tank reports, the newspapers, top-line newspapers who have published nationally as well as internationally on this issue. If we further dissect this discourse, ladies and gentlemen, we'll find out that we can divide it into three categories. First, the international scholars. Those international scholars have largely covered areas such as strike locations, the weapons that were used during the conflict, then also the future of strategic stability in South Asia, and also the conflict management by the international powers. So these were largely broader themes which they covered by the international community. If you look at the second category, the Indian scholarship, they have largely covered actually they naturally justified Operation Sindoor and its rationale. They also tried to give an impression that this is something which is now the so-called new normal between India and Pakistan, and the Indian foreign policy will have this kind of feature as a permanent feature in its foreign policy. So overall, they have tried to convince the world that this was something which was very required in nature. The third category, ladies and gentlemen, and most of them are sitting across the table as well, are those Pakistani scholars who have also written extensively. And those scholars have tried to naturally justify and, in fact, celebrated the resolve of the leadership, political and civil and military leadership during the conflict. They also celebrated the downing of Rafales, in fact, but they also questioned about the strategic stability's future in this region. And also they have tried to cover largely the theme about the future of South Asia after this Pakistan's strong response against the aggression that was against it. But one thing, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at these kind of broad themes, that these all themes, uh, you know, uh, mentioned many things. But in my opinion, the humanitarian aspect and legal aspect of this conflict was did not get due share in the cyber domain as it should have get overall. So this is a very important, ladies and gentlemen, topic that we are going to discuss, because for all of us, 87 hours of conflict is now over. But those who lost their lives, the victims and the families of those victims, for them, the sorrow and grief is still perpetual. Mothers who lost their sons, wives who lost their husbands, uh, sisters who lost their brothers, and vice versa. For them, the sorrow and grief is for entire life. So we have to discuss this humanitarian aspect as well. We will also try to dissect that what international law, international conventions actually discuss about the protection of civilians during the armed conflicts. We will also try to understand that if there is a violation, and it was in fact a violation of any conventions that were there, so what would be the penalties and repercussions for the states? So we will try to find out these from our esteemed speakers as well. Last but not the least, we will also try to find out the understanding that whether we can bilaterally agree with India through back channel diplomacy for any kind of understanding to protect civilians during the armed conflicts. This could be also a discussion point for today's event. So we are lucky that we have a dynamic list of speakers who will largely cover the legal aspects as well as humanitarian aspects of the protection of civilians during the armed conflicts. We're also very much thankful to our collaborators, Mr. Amar Jahangir, the CEO of the Mishal, who have collaborated with us. And we are very much thankful to you, and we hope that, sir, that in future we will continue this kind of collaboration as well. So without further ado, now I request our esteemed partner, Mr. Amir Jahangir, the CEO of Mishal Pakistan, for his opening remarks. So, Mr. Amir Jahangir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, and especially the India Study Center for collaborating on this effort and highlighting this subject, which has not been part of the media discussion in the past. And I think the human aspect, the human loss that we see out of a conflict, that needs to be discussed and that needs to be debated and highlighted in a manner that what will happen to those who have lost their lives and also have suffered, and how they can be compensated in the time of peace. And also we should be conscious of how to debate so this does not happen again. And that is what we are here, and we would like you to comment on this and debate this and discuss this with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amir Jahangir Saab, for the brief but very comprehensive remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick announcement that today's chief guest, Mr. Rana Qasim Muhammad Noon, the chairman Parliamentary Committee on Kashmir, could not join us because of the flood-like situation in his constituency. So he had to travel to his constituency to be with his people in the area. Now, I request Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, Director General Institute of Strategic Studies, for his opening remarks. So, over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman BOG ISSI, Mr. Amir Jahangir, CEO Mishal Pakistan, esteemed speakers, distinguished participants, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. Let me begin by welcoming everyone to this seminar on the protection of civilians in armed conflict, with special reference to India's Operation Sindoor in the recent India-Pakistan conflict of May 2025. The ISSI is pleased to organize this seminar in collaboration with Mishal Pakistan, and I acknowledge the valuable contribution of its CEO, Mr. Amir Jahangir, in underscoring this vital concern. We have a group of eminent academics, legal experts, and civil society leaders to shed light on the myriad dimensions of this important subject. They will share insightful perspectives on the normative and legal aspects of the issue, the role of international legal institutions, and the part that diplomacy can play in ensuring accountability. Besides Operation Sindoor, speakers would also highlight how the Kashmiris in IIOJK continue to be subjected to indiscriminate violence and a relentless assault on their human rights by the occupying power. It is a privilege to have former Minister for Law, Justice and Parliamentary Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, as the guest of honor for the concluding session. He has been front and center in the protection and promotion of Pakistan's interests in the domain of international law. We would be enlightened by his incisive views on this matter. And unfortunately, Rana Qasim Noon could not join us, but we hope to get his remarks through some other means during the course of this seminar. Distinguished participants, as we are all aware, the Pahalgam attack of 22nd April 2025 was used as a pretext by India to launch completely unjustified and reckless military aggression against Pakistan. Without holding any worthwhile investigation or sharing even a shred of evidence, India accused Pakistan of complicity in the Pahalgam attack and expected the world to endorse both its false narrative and its bellicose intentions. Obviously, the world community did not oblige. India also rejected Pakistan's offer for a transparent, credible, and neutral international investigation into the incident. Many in the international community viewed this offer and a way to avoid conflict that could seriously endanger international peace and security. Excuse me. Under its Operation Sindoor, India struck civilian areas in Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir, including residential neighborhoods, mosques, and essential services. In these indiscriminate strikes, 40 civilians lost their lives, including women and children. Besides being a breach of the time-honored principles of interstate relations, India's belligerent action represented a clear violation of international humanitarian law and the UN Security Council resolutions on the protection of civilians in armed conflict. Article 15 of the Additional Protocol of the Geneva Conventions of 1949 deals with the protection of civilian population and explicitly prohibits indiscriminate attacks. Article 51(5)(b) of the additional protocol describes indiscriminate attacks inter alia as an attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. Furthermore, Article 51(6) clearly stipulates that attacks against the civilian population or civilians by way of reprisals are prohibited. As we all know, this Article 51, excuse me, remains one of the core legal foundations for the protection of civilians in armed conflict under international humanitarian law. For the last 25 years, the UN Security Council has also maintained a sharp focus on the protection of civilians in armed conflict. The Council's foundational resolution S/Res/1265 of 1999 strongly condemns the deliberate targeting of civilians in situations of armed conflict, as well as attacks on objects protected under international law, and calls on all parties to put an end to such practices. The resolution also emphasizes the importance of preventing conflicts which could endanger international peace and security, and stresses implementing appropriate preventive measures to resolve conflicts, including the use of the United Nations and other dispute settlement mechanisms. Pakistan's response to India's unprovoked aggression was distinctly different. Acting within its rights to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, Pakistan restricted its operations to specific military targets. It focused on Indian command centers and combat assets while avoiding civilian harm. In doing so, Pakistan aimed to uphold its right to self defense, remaining within the parameters of combat rules and humanitarian norms. It demonstrated both military strength as well as moral restraint. Within a wider context, India's actions of May 2025 cannot be seen as an isolated violation of international humanitarian law. It must be viewed as a continuum and a part of a trajectory of serial abuses of human rights, extending from its unlawful and rogue conduct in IIOJK to the Operation Sindoor conducted on the basis of fabricated charges. The extrajudicial killings, torture, lockdowns, blackouts, and widespread suppression of dissent in IOOJK served as the ominous backdrop for India's treacherous onslaught of May 2025. Together, they represent not episodic misconduct, but a pattern of unremitting hostility and aggressive behavior on the part of India. This linkage underscores how vital it is to see violations in one domain leading to excesses in another, rather than treating each catastrophe as an isolated occurrence. Distinguished participants, civilian participation cannot be treated as secondary in warfare. It is the ultimate moral and legal boundary. Allowing impunity for civilian losses in Operation Sindoor risks setting a precedent that undermines international humanitarian law and the very institutions meant to uphold it. It is imperative to consider essential diplomatic and legal recourse to ensure accountability. We hope our distinguished speakers will help evaluate Operation Sindoor as more than just a regional conflict, but rather as a litmus test for the resilience of international humanitarian law, the effectiveness of global governance frameworks, and the imperative need for states to fulfill their obligations towards civilian protection amidst combat operations. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Swell. Ladies and gentlemen, as I earlier mentioned, that the grief and sorrow for the families of the victims is perpetual for entire life. We have very brief few documentaries for you, which would give you some kind of understanding that how individuals are going to face the brunt of this conflict once their loved ones are no more in this world. So I would request Waleed to play those videos for you.
On the 10th of May, during India's illegal Operation Sindoor against Pakistan, Samina's life was torn apart in a single moment. Her husband, Mian Nisar, and her two sons, Habibur Rahman and Ibrahim, were taken away from her in the deadly strikes. One of her sons survived, but was left severely injured, needing constant care. Now Samina must not only tend to her injured child, but also support her young daughter, who is still studying, all the while facing the crushing reality that every breadwinner in her home is gone. The house that once echoed with laughter is now silent. The kitchen empty, and every day is a fight to put even the smallest meal on the table. With no one to turn to, Samina carries the weight of grief, responsibility, and survival on her shoulders. India's aggression didn't just take lives that day. It left behind broken families, shattered futures, and a mother who must somehow keep going in a world that has taken almost everything from her. Ziaullah, a father, a son, and the only breadwinner for his family. He lived a simple life but carried heavy responsibilities. With an aging father and two young children to care for, Zia worked at Manila Sharif, a quiet post near the border, where silence was often broken by the sound of distant shelling. Then came India's illegal attack, Operation Sindoor. Without warning, artillery fire rained down, violating all international norms. In that unprovoked assault, Zia was caught in the crossfire and never came back. His children now wake up every morning not to their father's voice, but to his memory. His mother, once just a grandmother, now plays the role of both parents, feeding, comforting, holding the family together with silent strength. His father, once proud and standing tall, now sits in silence, staring at the photo of his son, who should have outlived him. Ziaullah wasn't a soldier, he was a civilian, a caretaker, a man trying to give his family a better life. India's illegal aggression didn't just take a life, it shattered a home, orphaned two children, and left an entire family in grief. He wasn't just a casualty of war, he was a victim of injustice.
من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله والله مع الصابرين.
जो लोग यकीन रखते थे कि उनको अल्लाह के रूबरू हाजिर होना है, वो कहने लगे कि बसा औकात थोड़ी सी जमात ने अल्लाह के हुक्म से बड़ी जमात पर फतह हासिल की है और अल्लाह साबित कदम रहने वालों के साथ है.
कल रात को सर हमारे घरों में इंडियन आर्मी की तरफ से बिला इश्तिहाल फायरिंग हुई सिविल सोसाइटी पे, जिसके नतीजे में बहुत से गाँव मुतासर हुए। और उसी बिला इश्तिहाल फायरिंग में मैं घर के पास खड़ा था तो शल आके मेरी टांग पे लगा, जिसकी वजह से मेरी टांग ज़ाया हो गई है। और भी आबादी में को निशाना बनाया गया, जिसमें बहुत सारे लोग जख्मी हुए और कुछ लोगों ने शहादत नसीब।
The tensions are really high, and nowhere has it felt more than right here, right close to the line of control. We're on the Pakistan-administered side of Kashmir, but just behind us there, the hills you can see behind there, that's Indian-controlled Kashmir, and we're actually standing here in this little tiny dip because there are Indian outposts that overlook this village and can shoot into this village. And if you look just up there, we'll just pan the camera around up there, that house is where all the villagers are hiding out and spending their nights because they don't feel safe anymore. There's shooting that's going on during the night time. The women, the children, the men here tell us are afraid. They tell them, don't worry, we'll be okay, we've got shelter. But it's affecting their daily lives. They have these small fields that you can see here, and they have cattle, and the cattle wander down the valley and they wander across the line of control.
But it did, wiping out Bilal Mosque, killing 3 people, including Jamil's 82-year-old father, Muhammad.
Do you want revenge against India?
हम मुसलमान हैं और
We are Muslims. My father was martyred in this attack. That's honor for us. Revenge against India? That's the duty of our armed forces and government, and we have full faith in them.
India has full faith it hit a terror target. Kursid is the imam here.
What's the future of this conflict? What do you want to see happen with Kashmir?
I think India needs to stop the war. Children like me who were attacked, our education was disturbed. I want to say to India, whatever your issues, we need to sit down and resolve it. Pakistan wants peace, and I want Pakistan to talk on the Kashmir issue.
Thank you, Waleed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll take the words of Nimra Safir at the end, who said that there is only one possibility and one alternative, and that is peace. We need to securitize this humanitarian and legal aspect as well, because the Jamil Akbar of 83 years old, Samina Kausar Bibi, or Irtaza Abbas of 3 years old had nothing to do with the conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also trying to get the video message by the chief guest of today's event. So we are trying to get the video message, and we'll play maybe in next working session as well. We'll take 10 minutes brief refreshments break, and we'll join again in 10 minutes with the first working session of this event. Thank you so much.
that is, civilian protection must remain the foremost priority in all conflict situations. Legal framework, humanitarian norms, and diplomatic instruments exist, but their effectiveness depends on our collective will to uphold and enforce them. I hope today's deliberation will help us not only highlight the violations committed in Operation Sindoor by India, but also contribute to broader thinking on how states and international institutions and civil society can reinforce norms of civilian protection in multi-domain conflicts. Ladies and gentlemen, this brief introduction, I would invite the first speaker, who is Mr. Eman Azhar, because he has to go, he has to, no, he has to go for us. So he will address the diplomatic and political dimensions, emphasizing Pakistan's responsibility to pursue accountability through effective engagement with the international community. Mr. Eman Azhar is a renowned Pakistani broadcast journalist and currently serves as Executive Director of Center for Law and Security, where he leads critical discourse on national security, foreign policy, and legal developments. Mr. Eman Azhar, you have the floor, please.
Can I be bilingual? Thank you so much, Dr. Talat Shabir. With due apologies to Awais Anwar Saab, I took his spot because I had to leave immediately after this. But I'm very honored to be here. Excellency Ambassador Sohail Mahmood Saab, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood Saab, thank you. I'm very honored to be invited here to this expert huddle on Pakistan's legal response and civilian casualties during Operation Sindoor. The focus of my talk would be accountability through diplomacy and Pakistan's response to violations in Operation Sindoor. I'll take about 10 minutes to make my humble submissions, and it'll be divided in 3 parts. And the first one would be what is basically India's approach, or what is India's plan. Second, what is Pakistan's case as far as these violations are concerned? And lastly, can Pakistan hold India accountable through diplomacy, through diplomatic and legal channels? So I'm going to start with, we need to see these things from India's lens. कि इंडिया इन सारी चीज़ों को जो है वो किस तरह से देख रहा है. अगर आप इस सारे ऑपरेशन को देखें और इस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को देखें तो इवन ऑन May 7th, India was trying to make a case for its strikes that they did 7th May को. This was after the strike, और उनकी जो फॉरेन मिनिस्ट्री की स्टेटमेंट थी, it emphasized more on Pakistan not taking action against non-state actors and individuals who are perpetrating alleged terror in Indian territories. अब इंडिया के पास इसके सिर्फ 2 तरीके थे कि अपनी जो स्ट्राइक्स है उनको जस्टिफाई करता. वन वाज अंडर आर्टिकल 51 जो कि सेल्फ डिफेंस का है, और दूसरा जो है कि यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल से जो है वो उनको कोई सैंक्शन की जाती इस तरह के यूज ऑफ फोर्स. तो जाहिर बात है दूसरा तो हुआ नहीं. सो इंडिया वाज एम्फसाइजिंग मोर ऑन आर्टिकल 51, और इंडिया वाज मेकिंग अ केस अबाउट सेल्फ डिफेंस. और ये वही केस है जो इंडिया ने 2016 में, जब उन्होंने एक सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक्स का दावा किया था, एंड देन इन बालाकोट एज वेल व्हेन दे कैरिड आउट स्ट्राइक्स, तो दिस वाज द सेम आर्गुमेंट. ये वो लीगल आर्गुमेंट है जो कि इंडिया की तरफ से जो है वो दिया गया. सो 2016 से एक कंटिन्यूटी ऑफ एक लीगल स्टांस है जो आपको इंडियन पोजीशन के अंदर जो है वो नजर आता है. अब पाकिस्तान का जो केस है वो इसके मुकाबले में जो है वो क्या है, स्पेशली फोकसिंग ऑन ऑपरेशन सिंदूर. नंबर 1, जाहिर बात है हम ये कहते हैं कि यूएन चार्टर जो आर्टिकल 2 है उसके खिलाफ वर्जी है. आप किसी भी मेंबर स्टेट के अगेंस्ट जो है वो यूज ऑफ फोर्स इस तरह से जो है वो नहीं कर सकते, यूनिलैटरली जो है वो नहीं कर सकते. एंड पाकिस्तान हैज ऑल्सो बीन एम्फसाइजिंग दैट व्हाइल आर्टिकल 51 allows for unilateral self-defense in immediate aftermath of an armed attack, it requires such matters to go through a certain process. वो process जो था वो क्या है कि India should have gone to Security Council, जो कि वो नहीं गए, or they must report such incidents. So what India was trying to do was کہ India خود ہی جو ہے وہ ایک کیس کے اندر جو ہے وہ it was جو ہے وہ کیا کہتے ہیں plaintiff بھی تھا, جوری بھی تھی, اور ایگزیکیوٹر بھی جو ہے they were in the same case. India not only failed to do so, but they also sidestepped basically any attempt to seek international endorsement or oversight. While you remember پاکستان کی طرف سے ایک انٹرنیشنل انویسٹیگیشن کی جو ہے وہ آفر کی گئی تھی, اور پاکستان نے یہ بھی کہا تھا کہ آپ کسی تھرڈ کنٹری کو جو ہے وہ انوالو کر لیں, لیکن ایسی کسی بھی اوورسائٹ کو جو ہے وہ انڈیا نے جو ہے وہ ایکسیپٹ نہیں کیا. اور پاکستان کا جو کیس ہے, پاکستان کا کیس یہ ہے کہ انڈیا ان دس کیس واز این اگریسر اینڈ اٹ واز اے وائلیشنز آف انٹرنیشنل لا اینڈ لیگل نارمس. دوسرا پاکستان کا جو کیس ہے وہ انٹرنیشنل ہیومینیٹیرین لا کے جو ہے وہ یہ کہ انڈیا نے جن سائٹس کو اٹیک کیا, اور انڈیا نے خود کہا کہ وہ نان ملٹری جو ہے وہ اسٹرائکس تھیں. آپ اگر ان کا وہ لیگل نیریٹو, ان کا فارن آفس کا بھی نیریٹو دیکھیں تو دے بین ایمفسائزنگ کہ پاکستان کی ملٹری کو جو ہے وہ ٹارگٹ نہیں کیا, اینڈ وی ٹارگیٹڈ ٹیرر گروپس. اور وہ کیس اسی لیے تھا بیکاز دے وانٹیڈ ٹو اینڈ دا کانفلکٹ دیر آن 6/7 کو جو ہے وہ اس کو ختم کرنا چاہتے تھے, اینڈ دے ڈڈ ناٹ وانٹ دس ٹو ٹرن انٹو این اٹیک آن ملٹری جس کا پاکستان جو ہے وہ رسپانس دیتا. تو پاکستان کی پوزیشن کو بھی انہوں نے ایک طرح سے سرکموینٹ کرنے کی کوشش کی, بٹ ان اے وے دے ایڈمیٹڈ دیم سیلوز دیٹ the targeted attacks were actually made on non-military personnel, جو کہ ان کا کہنا یہ ہے کہ یہ نان اسٹیٹ ایکٹرز تھے, بٹ ہمارا یہ کہنا ہے کہ یہ سویلینس پر جو ہے وہ اٹیک تھا. سو انڈیا ان اے وے violated Geneva Conventions as well, or also a misuse of Article 51, جو سیلف ڈیفینس کا جو آرٹیکل ہے that they've been جو ہے وہ proposing کہ وہ اس کے ایمبٹ کے اندر جو ہے وہ یہ اسٹرائکس جو ہے وہ کر رہے ہیں, یا انہوں نے آپریشن سندور کیا ہے. تو انڈیا وائلیٹڈ اینڈ مس یوزڈ آرٹیکل 51. ہمارے بہت سے استاد بیٹھے ہیں, امر بلال صوفی صاحب, آئی تھنک یہ زیادہ ذرا اس پہ جو ہے وہ مزید بات کریں گے, لیکن آئی ایم گوئنگ ٹو فوکس آن ڈپلومیسی, کہ ڈپلومیسی جو ہے وہ کہاں پر آتی ہے, اینڈ دس از دا تھرڈ اینڈ دا میجر پارٹ آف مائی presentation. Accountability میں is it really possible that we can hold India accountable for its actions using legal platforms and diplomatic platforms یا نہیں؟ اور یہ پاکستان کے لیے ایک بڑا سوال ہے کہ پاکستان کو جو ہے وہ آگے کس طرح سے جو ہے وہ کرنا ہے, because this is not going to be the last attack. There will be more, and we should prepare ourselves, and we should not just prepare ourselves, we should prepare the legal, moral, ethical, political grounds for future as well. So پاکستان کو بھی جو بھی چیزیں کرنی ہیں وہ ان سب چیزوں کو جو ہے وہ دیکھتے ہوئے کرنی. The conflicts are not now like 5-day war or 10-day war. Conflicts are longer, وہ perpetuate کرتے ہیں, they are going on for years, and Pakistan and India I feel are in a position کہ جہاں پر ان کا جو ہے وہ ایک بیٹل فیلڈ کے اندر ایک ڈائریکٹ جو ہے وہ کانفلکٹ تو جو ہے وہ نہیں ہے, بٹ دا کانفلکٹ از آن گوئنگ. سو سب سے پہلے نمبر 1 پوائنٹ از بیسیکلی اکاؤنٹیبلٹی تھرو سیکورٹی کونسل. پاکستان نے جولائی میں جب پاکستان کے پاس UN سیکورٹی کونسل کی پریزیڈنسی تھی, تو پاکستان نے اس وقت بھی اس چیز کو ایمفسائز کیا تھا کہ پیسفل سیٹلمنٹ جو ہے وہ ہونی چاہیے. بٹ انڈیا ہیز بین sidestepping any peaceful resolution or settlement of disputes using UN Security Council, and not just Security Council use of that platform, but also what Security Council has been asking. Time and again, Pakistan has highlighted that how India has ignored what UN Security Council has said, and I think Pakistan has a case there. India has been asked to take certain measures by UN Security Council, یا انہوں نے جو دوسری ان کی جو pronouncements ہیں, but India has not been following it. Secondly, Pakistan's case through diplomacy is in human rights context, especially what India has been doing in Kashmir. This is not related to Operation Sindoor, but like I said, this is an extended conflict. اور اس ایکسٹینڈیڈ کانفلکٹ کے اندر وی مسٹ برنگ ان کشمیر ٹو دس اور کشمیر کی جب بات آتی ہے تو کشمیر پر ملٹیپل جو ہے وہ یو این سیکورٹی کونسل ریزولوشنز اور بہت ساری اور چیزیں ہیں جو پاکستان جو ہے وہ پاکستان کین ٹیک ان ٹو اکاؤنٹ اینڈ پاکستان کین ہولڈ انڈیا اکاؤنٹیبل دیٹ دس از ناٹ جسٹ اباؤٹ attacks on civilians during Operation Sindoor, but this is an extended conflict. اور کشمیر کے اندر جو انٹرنیشنل ہیومن رائٹس کی جو وائلیشنز ہیں پاکستان مسٹ میک اے کیس جب ہم آپریشن سندور اور اس سے ریلیٹڈ جو ہے وہ لیگل اور پولیٹیکل آپشنز کی بات کرتے ہیں. تھرڈلی تیسری جو آپشن ہے اگین این ایکسٹینڈیڈ آپشن مائنورٹیز اور اسلاموفوبیا is another important aspect that Pakistan must keep highlighting along with these options. اسلاموفوبیا کے اوپر جو ہے وہ OIC کا پلیٹ فارم بھی جو ہے وہ یوز ہو سکتا ہے. پاکستان should effectively use that. اور دوسرا مائنورٹیز کے ساتھ جو کچھ انڈیا کے اندر ہو رہا ہے پاکستان must emphasize through diplomatic channels as well and through multilateral platforms کہ مائنورٹیز کے ساتھ انڈیا کے اندر اور اسپیشلی ود مسلمز ان انڈیا جو کچھ ہو رہا ہے وچ از پارٹ آف دا ہندوتوا ایجنڈا اور ان کی گورنمنٹ لیڈ پالیسیز ہیں پاکستان مسٹ فوکس آن دیٹ. فورتھلی انڈیا ہیز ٹرائی ٹو ویپنائز واٹر after this conflict, and this is a very important aspect جس پہ پاکستان کو ایک پاکستان can find support. UN Security Council recognizes water as a key right. UN کے جو باقی پلیٹ فارمز ہیں وہ بھی واٹر کو ایز اے کی رائٹ جو ہے وہ اس کو جو ہے وہ مانتے ہیں. تو پاکستان should also make a case against India that India is in breach, India is in violation of these pronouncements of multiple platforms of United Nations, and India is weaponizing water. Fifthly, ICCPR اور بہت سارے اور ایسے conventions ہیں they were violated during this Operation Sindoor. اینڈ آلسو ڈیورنگ پاکستان اور انڈیا کے درمیان اس وقت جو ہے وہ کانفلکٹ جو ہے وہ چل رہا ہے اس کے اندر تو پاکستان شوڈ آلسو فوکس آن دیٹ. سکسلی آرٹیکل 370-35A کشمیر کے حوالے سے میں پہلے تھوڑی سی بات کر چکا ہوں بٹ انڈیا وائلیٹڈ یو این کی جو ریزولوشنز ہیں بائی چینجنگ دا اسٹیٹس آف آکوپائڈ ٹیریٹریز. اور آئی تھنک دس از آلسو امپورٹنٹ پارٹ آف پاکستانز کیس کہ اسٹیٹس جو چینج کرنا ہے آکوپائڈ ٹیریٹریز کا دیٹ از اے کلیئر وائلیشن آف international laws, international humanitarian laws. So Pakistan should also take into account that aspect as well. اب سب سے جو امپورٹنٹ پارٹ ہے آئی تھنک پوسٹ آپریشن سندور پاکستان کی جو لیگل پوزیشن ہے دیٹ نیڈس ٹو بی ویری کلیئر ایز فار ایز انڈس واٹر ٹریٹی از کنسرنڈ. انڈس واٹر ٹریٹی کے حوالے سے بہت ساری بات ہو چکی ہے. آئی وونٹ گو انٹو دا ڈیٹیلس. ویانا کنونشن, لا آف ٹریٹیز, یہ سارے کے سارے جو ہے وہ پاکستان کی پوزیشن کو جو ہے وہ سپورٹ کرتے ہیں لیکن انڈین پوزیشن اس کے اوپر یہ ہے کہ چینج آف سرکمسٹانسز جو ہے وہ ہو گئی ہے. اگر آپ ان کا انڈس واٹر ٹریٹی کے حوالے سے دیکھیں تو وی وڈ بی مسٹیکن ٹو تھنک کہ ان کی جو لیگل پوزیشن ہے وہ صرف اور صرف انڈس واٹر یہ آپریشن سندور کے کانٹیکسٹ کے اندر ہے. What they are doing is they are making a case based on demographic situation, change in population, اور وہ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ اب حالات کیونکہ وہ نہیں رہے تو اس لیے جو ہے وہ اس کو مزید اس کو وہ ابینس کے اندر جو ہے وہ کریں. Again, this is linked to their legal position on the Indus Water Treaty as well and why they have suspended it. Inaction against non-state actors is part of that. اس کے اندر وہ ہے لیکن that is just one component of it. سو پاکستان نے جب آگے انڈس واٹر ٹریٹی کے اوپر اپنی لیگل پوزیشن لینی ہے تو پاکستان مسٹ سی ٹو دس کہ انڈین یہ جو لیگل سٹانس ہے کہ وہ ڈیموگرافکس چینج ہو گئے ہیں اور سچویشن چینج ہو گئی ہے, پاپولیشن جو ہے وہ چینج ہو گئی ہے. سو یہ جو دیگر ایلیمنٹس ہیں ان کو پاکستان نے کس طرح سے جو ہے وہ ایڈریس کرنا ہے. آئی تھنک دس از گوئنگ ٹو بی اے کی ان وین وی موو فارورڈ تھرو ڈپلومیسی. and these legal forums as well. لیکن کچھ ریئل پالیٹک کے کوشچنز ہیں دیٹ پاکستان نیڈس ٹو ایڈریس ایز سون ایز پاسبل, اور اس میں سے سب سے امپورٹنٹ کوشچن یہ کہ کین بائیلیٹرلزم ورک اینی مور ود انڈیا اور ناٹ. پچھلے جو 5 یا 7 سال میں حالات رہے ہیں, whatever has been going on between Pakistan and India, India as a policy is ignoring and violating bilateralism. And India has been emphasizing on one hand that Pakistan and India, according to Shimla Agreement and other arrangements, Pakistan and India should talk to each other. لیکن ہو کیا رہا ہے کہ they've been blocking any جو ہے وہ through bilateralism, they've been blocking any move to improve relations between the two countries. So پاکستان کو اب دیکھنا ہے کہ کیا bilateralism جو ہے وہ واقعی can it work or not, especially in case of India. Pakistan should keep emphasizing کہ multilateralism is the way, اور پاکستان کو باقی ملکوں کو بھی یہی بتانے کی ضرورت ہے کہ bilateralism with India is not working anymore. انڈیا ایک کانفلکٹ کو جو ہے وہ آپ یہ نہیں کر سکتے کہ آپ ایک کانفلکٹ کو جو ہے وہ لے کر آ رہے ہیں اور پھر آپ اسی کو جو ہے وہ وہاں پر کسی بھی طرح کی جو ریزولوشن ہے اس کو جو ہے وہ بلاک کر رہے ہیں. سو میرا خیال ہے ہمیں اپنا کورس جو ہے وہ تھوڑا سا چینج کرنے کی ضرورت ہے تھرو ڈپلومیٹک چینلز ایز ویل, اینڈ وی مسٹ برنگ ان ملٹی لیٹرلزم, اینڈ پاکستان شوڈ فالو اے پاتھ کہ جہاں پر پاکستان کا جو لیگل نیریٹو ہے, پاکستان کا ڈپلومیٹک نیریٹو ہے, اس کا یہ حصہ ہونا چاہیے کہ if any disputes are to be solved between India and Pakistan, they should be solved through multilateralism. Pakistan should seek states, lower riparian states, جو کہ دنیا میں بہت ساری ہیں جہاں پر واٹر کے جو ہے وہ ایشوز ہیں. ناٹ فار ناؤ پاکستان اور انڈیا کے درمیان, although it was partition of rivers and not division of rivers that happened through Indus Water Treaty, لیکن لوور رائپیرین اسٹیٹس کے کنسرنز جو ہے وہ موجود رہتے ہیں. پاکستان شوڈ سی کہ لوور رائپیرین اسٹیٹس کے جو دیگر لوور رائپیرین اسٹیٹس ہیں ان کو کس طرح سے اپنے ساتھ کسی بھی پلیٹ فارم پہ یا کسی بھی فورم پر جو ہے وہ اکٹھا کیا جا سکتا ہے, اور ایسی کسی بھی موو جو کہ انڈیا نے لائک انڈس واٹر ٹریٹی, میں نے پہلے بات کی کہ بہت سارے وہ فیکٹرز کو جو ہے وہ مینشن کر رہے ہیں. سو ہمیں یہ دیکھنا ہے کہ ہم لوور رائپیرین اسٹیٹس کو کس طرح سے اکٹھا کر سکتے ہیں. یو ایس اور چائنا کو جو ہے وہ آن بورڈ لینا ہوگا. انڈیا از ان اے ڈپلومیٹیکلی ان اے پوزیشن ویئر انڈیا از ٹرائنگ ٹو فائنڈ پارٹنرز. ہمیں دیکھنا ہے کہ ہم یو ایس اور چائنا کے جو آفیسز ہیں یا ڈپلومیٹک چینلز ہیں ان کو فار انڈیا ٹو کم ٹو اے سارٹ آف ریزولوشن کس طرح سے یوز کر سکتے ہیں. لائک اے سیڈ, اور لاسٹلی ایک چیز, انٹرنیشنل میڈیا اس میں بہت امپورٹنٹ ہے. جو کہ آپ کا لیگل نیریٹو ہے, آپ کا پولیٹیکل نیریٹو ہے, وہ انٹرنیشنل میڈیا سے جو ہے وہ بنتا ہے. ان کا میڈیا جو ہے وہ اپنے لوگوں کو کچھ بھی بتاتے رہتے ہیں. ہمارا میڈیا جو ہے وہ ظاہری بات ہے ہمارے لوگوں کی حد تک جو ہے وہ ہے, لیکن اس آپریشن سندور کے اندر بھی دیکھیں, اگر نیریٹو بلڈنگ کے اندر اگر کسی نے کام کیا, سو اگر میں ایک بات کہہ رہا ہوں اور میرا مخالف ایک بات کہہ رہا ہے, سو پیپل وڈ گو ٹو اے تھرڈ پارٹی, اور وہ تھرڈ پارٹی اس کیس کے اندر جو ہے وہ انٹرنیشنل میڈیا تھا. انٹرنیشنل میڈیا کی کچھ رپورٹنگ کشمیر کے حوالے سے تھی, and we saw international narrative changing or shifting on Kashmir as well جب کشمیر کے اندر یہ آرٹیکل 370 کی بات ہوئی. سو اسی طرح سے ہمیں دیکھنا یہ ہے کہ انٹرنیشنل میڈیا کے اوپر ہمیں زیادہ افیکٹولی جو ہے وہ کس طرح سے اپنا نیریٹو کو جو ہے وہ اس کو جو ہے وہ پروجیکٹ کرنا ہے. آپریشن سندور کے اندر ہم نے اچھے طریقے سے کیا, لیکن یہ ہے کہ دس از این آن گوئنگ سچویشن, اور ہمیں ان تمام لیگل ایشوز اور یہ جو ڈپلومیٹک چینلز کی جن کی میں نے بات کی, پاکستان کو دیکھنا ہے کہ ان کو کس طرح سے اس کو جو ہے وہ ایڈریس کرنا ہے. انڈیا از بیسیکلی فالوئنگ اسرائیلی ماڈل. دے وانٹ ٹو ایمولیٹ دیم ود نو ریگارڈ ٹو لیگل, مورل, پولیٹیکل کنسیکوینسز. کرنا وہ یہاں پر بھی یہی چاہتے تھے. I mean, for example, what Israel did in Qatar yesterday is an example کہ کتنا ریگارڈ ہے. India wants to be in a similar boat, but for some reason India was not able to get away with the consequences. اور انڈیا کے اوپر انٹرنیشنل اور ڈپلومیٹک پریشر بھی ہے. So we must use, we should not just end it all here. یہ میں پچھلی دفعہ بھی جب یہاں پر آیا تھا تو میں نے یہی بات کی تھی کہ یہ جو سیلیبریٹری نیچر ہے نا, हमें चीज़ें इस सेलिब्रेटरी नेचर में हमें ये भी देखने की ज़रूरत है कि कहीं हम चीज़ों को यहाँ पर ही जो है वो ख़त्म ना कर दें। हमें इसके साथ साथ जो है वो देखना है, लाइक आई सेड, दैट दिस वाज नॉट द लास्ट अटैक दैट इंडिया डिड ऑन पाकिस्तान. देयर विल बी मोर अटैक्स. सो पाकिस्तान शुड सी कि पाकिस्तान की लीगल पोजीशन, पॉलिटिकल पोजीशन जो है वो क्या होनी है, एंड पाकिस्तान शुड कीप ऑन पुशिंग थ्रू डिप्लोमेटिक चैनल्स एंड लीगल चैनल्स एज वेल, ये जो ऑपरेशन जो है, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बाद की सूरत हाल. सो विद दैट आई थैंक यू सो मच.
Thank you, Rahman. I think you have carried a good appraisal of the current situation with regards to um, the situation in India, between India and Pakistan. I think you mentioned about accountability at the United Nations level and at the level of OIC, which is organization probably established to guard the interest of Islamic world. But I don't know how effective this is going to be, because the case has already been taken up at the United Nations and OIC. A very pertinent point: bilateralism, I think, has not worked for last 70 years. So India has always been trying to convince the world that it's a bilateral issue between Pakistan and India, and we will solve this bilaterally. But it is not happening. I think we have to build a narrative on this issue, that bilateralism is not working with both the countries, and the world community should come to resolve these issues. So a very senior Indian official made a statement after they attacked on 6th, 7 May. They said, we attacked hideouts of terrorists in Pakistan, and we didn't expect Pakistan to react. Yes, Pakistan to react. Similarly, probably Israeli also attacked the Qatar, and they expected, since they have attacked Hamas terrorists in living in Qatar, so Qatar should also not react. So this is very strange phenomena, being pleaded by Israel and India together. Thank you very much, Rahman, for your very excellent presentation. I think we have now Mr. Vas Anwar, and I will request him to examine India's violation of international humanitarian law and how Operation Sindoor exemplifies disregard for legal protection of non-combatants. Vas Anwar is Director of Research, Society of International Law, specializing in international humanitarian and criminal law. He has led in extensive research on conflict, human rights, and legal reforms, contributing to policy debates in Pakistan and beyond. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always an honor and a pleasure to be at the Institute. I thank you for the invitation, and Ambassador Saab, for having me here. There's a little added pressure today because I have my boss and my mentor sitting right beside me. And so that's there. But if there's anything that I've learned from international law, it's from him. If there's any contribution I can make today, it's because I stand on the shoulder of giants like Mr. Sufi. I just wanted to divide my discussion, much like Rahman Raza Saab, into three parts. The first is India's violation of international law. And now I know why Rahman Saab wanted to go before me, because he said all my points, right? I know we've run out of we've run out of things to discuss. Chaliji, so that's one issue. The second I wanted to discuss is the direction that international law and really the international rules-based order is taking after these events. India's actions are merely a symptom of what's going on, right? Just as what Israel is perpetrating, perhaps what the Russians are perpetrating to some extent. And then finally, I wanted to discuss. We've heard of a brave new world. I think we need to start talking about a rogue new world, right? And that's really something that I want to bring at the end. Crash course on international law and the use of force. There are two elements to this. Whenever you judge military action, you judge whether they had the right to use force. So this is called the jus ad bellum. The right to actually use force. It comes from the just war doctrine and all of those things. Are you entitled to use force? Are you legally allowed to use force? That's the first thing. And the second is jus in bello. That once you have used force, is the type of force you've used lawful? Did you target civilians? Did you target military personnel? What weapons you used? All of those things, right? So let's break this down one by one. So the jus ad bellum, whether you're allowed to use force in the first place, right? That is determined by the UN Charter, right? There is the prohibition in Article 2.4 where you cannot interfere in the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. Blanket ban on war, essentially. And the only, I would say, the only exception to this is the right of self-defense under Article 51. And that too is if somebody else, another state has violated your territorial sovereignty, your territorial integrity, and political independence. Then in response to that, you can take military action to thwart that threat. Now, India seems to be trying to utilize these mechanisms, or at least is trying to pay lip service to this international order. The issue is that Article 51 isn't, just a light thing that you can use as anyone pleases. There has to be a certain threshold that one meets. If I was to do a cyber attack on a small Indian firm, does that mean that India has the right to launch an attack on me, on Pakistan? If a crime is taking place by a Pakistani citizen in the UK, does that mean the UK has a right? No, there has to be a threshold that is met beyond which and that is armed force by the use of armed force by a state. And in this context, terrorists attacking does not meet that threshold as far as traditional international law is concerned. Now, of course, since 9/11, we've seen attempts by the United States and its allies to really reshape this understanding of what is an armed attack? Does it trigger Article 51? And they've been using it in novel, different ways. This is not something that Pakistan accepts, nor is this the orthodox position of international law. It's not the European position of international law. It just seems to be on the other side of the Atlantic, and Israel, to some extent, uses this. So this is highly problematic. India has also started adopting it because it finds itself, to be a conjoined twin with Israel, even though the Israeli public, does not reciprocate that love, sadly, for the Indians. What we could also see is that why did India have to resort to this? That you had a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, and then without even an investigation, they go and launch an attack on Pakistan. Because the issue is less about accountability, about bringing people to justice, and more about how can we utilize this as an opportunity for internal politics, but also for maligning Pakistan further as a state sponsor of terrorism. And that has really been the strategy that India has been employing for the past 2 decades, in fact, longer, and has utilized many of these attacks that take place in their territory. And now let's move on to sorry, the problem here was that when a terrorist attack takes place, terrorism is essentially a crime, correct? And to deal with crimes, you do not fire missiles. What you do is you have mechanisms in place, legal mechanisms in place, such as mutual legal assistance, extradition. And these could all have been engaged with Pakistan. And it's not that there isn't a history of Pakistan cooperating. We have cooperated in multiple investigations in Pakistan. And for years on end, we've been assisting them. And even through that process, we've learned that the Indians are not interested in justice. They're interested in using this label as a whipping tool, as a whip against Pakistan and tarnishing our image. Because if you look at Mumbai attacks, the cases that were here, the evidence that they produced were photocopies. They wouldn't be admissible in an Indian court, let alone a Pakistani court initially. And then so these were really just delay tactics there. So the intention behind India's attacks, I think, are very important to understand, that this is simply perpetuating the same thing. And it's also something that is part of India's own failure and negligence, where had they engaged with Pakistan, you would have had better mutual legal assistance or extradition mechanisms, treaties in place. We have a SARC mechanism that we're not party to because of the animosity between our states. And it is really this intransigence, this stubbornness by the Modi government not to engage with Pakistan on these issues and not to resolve them, because Pakistan has been willing to engage on these issues. The second is jus in bello, which is, once you've entered war, what did they target? Did they target that lawfully? And we have, I don't need to go into this. Rahman Saab has done an excellent job. But there's, all of international humanitarian law is based on the premise that you do not target civilians, right? That you make a distinction. The principle of distinction states you distinguish between military forces and civilians, between military objects that give you a military advantage and civilian objects. And wherever there is, for example, collateral damage is possible. You're targeting a military installation or a military personnel, but there are also civilians in that area. So there's collateral damage. You have to weigh, you have to conduct a proportionality test where you have to see whether the military advantage that you gain from this attack outweighs the loss of civilian lives. Nothing of the sort seems to have been conducted by the Indians because there was no military target as they mentioned themselves. So you can't even do this balancing act because on one scale there is nothing, right? And so what we see is a deliberate targeting of civilians, whether you want to label them as terrorists, if we take their argument, right? And not only was it civilians, but it's civilian objects which have a certain level of reverence in our world. Mosques. Mosques were deliberately attacked. Children were killed in these attacks. And what we see here is that this was, again, more symbolic than it was, to bring up, to get the terrorists or to get whoever they claim or allege were involved in this. It was about Hindutva policy trying to target Islam, right? And we have to look at it in that way. This is not mere, just secular actions taken by this. Ultimately, these things combine there, and that's what helps Modi's politics ultimately get there. So IHL, there's a number of articles. Article 27 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which respects religious as well as the lives of people. Article 32 to 34, you can't murder, torture, no corporal punishment against civilians. And then you have Common Article 3 to all the Geneva Conventions, which, I'm sorry if I'm taking more from your argument, Dr.
Redesigning.
Okay. All right, wonderful, wonderful. So then Common Article 3, which looks at general, prohibition on any sort of violations against civilians, right? And this is common to all, the Geneva Conventions, and it is liable in both international armed conflicts and non-international armed conflicts. So again, these were some of the issues that I wanted to discuss in the first part. Let's move on to the direction that international law is taking, and what India has done is really merely a symptom of all of this. First of all, what I see happening right now, and it's not just this particular incident, but what's happening globally, is that there is a fragmentation of the international order. So start expecting more of the same, more of what happened yesterday with Qatar. The strikes in Qatar, expect more of states deciding to resort to armed conflict as opposed to finding alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, such as the offices of the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, all of these dispute resolution forums. And very importantly, there's a loss of sanctity of international humanitarian law. So the statement all is fair in love and war, of course that is wrong, because there's nothing, not all is fair either in love or in war. And so what you see here is that prohibition on certain weapons to be used or on certain tactics to be used, or the prohibition on targeting civilians. We've seen the last 2 years what Israel is doing. We've seen a lot of violations with regards to what the Ukrainians or what the Russians are doing there. And these become issues that need to be discussed and need to be resolved right now, because if we lose the sanctity of IHL, of international humanitarian law, the law that protects us in the worst of times, the barbarity of war, the only thing that protects you there is this legal protection that you have, this which is really just a notion. It is a fragment of our imagination that we have come together as an international group to say that, no, this is a sanctity that we must afford. We've also utilize this terrorism label. It's come to fruition. So what started after 9/11 has come to fruition now, where you can dehumanize and basically target individuals just by labeling them as terrorists. And one added advantage is that if they also happen to be Muslim, then it's fair game. So these are two things that you can basically target anyone based on these. So the rules have changed altogether. That there's a set of rules for the entire world. But if you're Muslim and we can, concoct a story to call you a terrorist, then the different set of rules apply. That's what seems to be happening right now. There's a breakdown in enforcement mechanisms with the US sanctioning the ICC, for example. The ICJ, again, limited use there, gridlock in the UN Security Council. So we don't have the mechanisms to really resolve these types of conflicts. So what else when and I keep on saying this, when men in suits can't resolve a problem, then it's men in uniform who resolve it, right? And this is an issue that comes up there as well. So we're also seeing a withdrawal from international law. There are fewer multilateral conventions that have been signed in the past 2 decades than ever in history. Right. So every decade, if you break down the number of multilateral conventions, UN conventions, the last 2 decades have seen the fewest. So it's more a world of bloc politics and of bilateralism and things like that. My third and final point is that we are now entering a rogue new world. Now, this might be an aberration. Many might say that this is the Trump effect, but I have my doubts. I do not think that, say, a democratic government the Democrats were to come into power in, say, the U.S., that things would change, significantly. The reason being is that the influence that the U.S. Used to wield is not there anymore. So its ability to, say, rein in rogue actors like Israel has also diminished. Its ability to influence countries like India from resorting to use of force in the face of a crime would also have been reduced there. So I think that's an issue there. And the other issue is that international law restrained states from the Second World War onwards. It restrained states. And the unrestrained aggression can be quite intoxicating for a lot of these states, right? Especially for Israel. Every single neighbor that Israel has, other than perhaps Egypt, it has targeted. Lebanon, Syria, it's gone as far afield as Iran and Yemen and now Qatar. Qatar, a place that was considered a sanctuary. So what we're seeing now is that there is this resort to force that states will not want, like now that they have been unshackled by international law, it's going to be very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle. And another thing that I want to reiterate, yesterday or sorry, a few days ago, Smotrich, which is the finance minister of Israel, visited India. And when I had read that headline, I said, we're on the right side of history here, right? Because the Indians gave him red carpet treatment, they signed agreements with him, and they consider him. And let me remind you, he is the progenitor of much of the genocidal talk that comes from Israel. Extremely right wing, right? And he's really the one who says, the dehumanizing elements, and then the rest of the government and Netanyahu say that, he's not involved in the actual war fighting. He's just a finance minister. But in any case, what we see is this natural alliance developing between Israel and India. And it's not because of trade. It's not because of anything else. It's because there is a right-wing anti-Muslim government in Israel, and there is a right-wing anti-Muslim government in India. And this is something that really unites them and brings them together on the same page. It is the hatred for Islam, and we become then, as a Muslim country, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, we become, number one targets in the crosshairs. Having a nuclear weapon also makes you another target there. So these are issues that we need to navigate in a way that allows for Pakistan to survive. And again, I think it was earlier mentioned that the Indians didn't expect a response, just like the Israelis don't expect a response. The difference between Qatar and Pakistan was Pakistan gave a response because it had a deterrent capability. It had the ability to fight back. Qatar just today said that we will fight this legally and diplomatically, right? Because it did not have that. So take pride in the force that you have, in the ability to defend yourselves, and stay ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Awais Anwar, for your very candid views. I think you talked of fragmented international order, where we have lost of sanctity for international norms also. And I think the rule-based order that certain quarter in the discourse say, I think it's not the rule-based order anymore. Of course, it is very selective with regards to the world, particularly if you mentioned about Muslims, and it's selective targeting. The status quo seems to be perpetuating in times to come, unless there's some major development. And Rogue New World Order is a new phrase that you used. I think the world is going to see much of it in times to come. Thank you very much for a very good presentation. I would now like to invite Dr. Mariam Fatma, and I will request her to highlight the role of international institutions, United Nations, International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court in preventing civilian targeting and ensuring accountability. Dr. Fatma is an assistant professor specializing in human rights, law of armed conflict, peace and conflict studies. Her research focuses on violent religious conflicts, political violence, radicalism, democracy, constitutional law, and issues of ethnicity and nationalism. Dr. Maryam, you have the floor, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. And thank you for giving me the floor. And I'm very grateful to the organizers of this seminar today for giving me the opportunity to be here and express my views. So I have a number of points to discuss with you all. And I would not be focusing on the legal dimensions more because two of my colleagues who had the opportunity of speaking before me, they spoke a lot about the legal dimensions of the conflict that emerged between India and Pakistan in May. So the program that was shared with me, it gave me the focus of my talk as the targeting of civilians in Operation Sindoor, the role of UN, ICJ, and ICC. So I will come to that point in a while because some of it has already been discussed by my colleagues before me. I would like to begin with a few points that what is civilian targeting and how Pakistan is affected by it, and how it manifests in different parts of Pakistan. So for me, the story doesn't begin with Operation Sindoor. It begins way earlier than that. I would like to begin with a point that in war, there are no victories, only casualties. So for Pakistan, the casualties doesn't begin in May. It begins way before that. And I'm not referring to the conventional wars that have been fought between Pakistan and India. I would like to refer to the point that India and its spy masters, its leaders, they have been using a genocidal rhetoric against Pakistan. And their media is in a hyper-nationalist frenzy, which spews hatred against Pakistan. And then the most important point, which really affects me as a Pakistani, that why should be I talking about the civilian casualties that happened on the night of 6th and 7th of May? And why not what happened before that? For me, life does not begin with Pahalgam. For me, the life begins with Balochistan. And Pakistan has been taking a brunt of terrorism that for sure was perpetrated by India. Pakistan has been having evidence of that. There have been uncountable life losses in Pakistan, where India, its spy masters, its politicians, they have been taking blatant public credit for orchestrating these destabilizing activities within Pakistan, especially with a special focus on the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province and Balochistan. So for me, what is Pahalgam? India has already been targeting civilians within Pakistan. And right before Pahalgam, there was this incident of Jafar Express. And if you look at the international media, the Indians were making fun of Pakistan. What was the perspective that they shared? That how come a train was taken hostage by some militants or non-state actors within Balochistan, and how come so many people were killed? So they were this sort of mockery that I came across and I witnessed in how Indians were talking about that incident. So if I want to make a point here that the civilians are being targeted by India and Pakistan through their militant, their recruitment, funding, mobilization of the terrorist groups and the militant groups within these provinces. I also want to make a point that India is publicly taking credit for that too. So what happened in Pahalgam, I'll come to that later on, that why was Pahalgam done, why I would say, and I have the audacity to say that it was a false flag operation that Indians did themselves. I come back to Balochistan before that. So after Jafar Express, Pakistan was very cautious, and Pakistan has always been cautious, with something I don't agree, and I don't agree with this any longer. Pakistan should be flexing more diplomatic muscle and more diplomatic outreach to the capitals of the world, where it should ensure that everybody in the world knows that India is a sponsor of terrorism within the South Asian region. And for that, I don't need to give proofs. We do have the proofs as Pakistanis. But the statements of the Indian politicians, their spy master Ajit Doval is enough to corroborate my perspective. And also the presence of a serving naval officer, Kalbhushan Yadav, is also there, and his admissions are already there that Pakistan has enough evidence to show to the world. Also, there are documents that have been shared by international spy agency CIA, which actually are corroborating Pakistan's stance on the issue of India sponsoring terrorism within Pakistan. So basically, what I want to say here that India should be not just held accountable for what happened on 6th and 7th of May, it should be held accountable for all those activities that happened before this incident and right after the May 10th India and Pakistan clash. There was this press release of BLA in which it was showing allegiance to India, seeking help from it with funding, recruitment for mobilization of its militants in Pakistan. And right after a few days, there was this very sorry and tragic attack on a bus of schoolgirls in Balochistan. And there were many incidents in a row. So this is what India is doing. It is actually an enemy that Pakistan is facing, which has no morality. It has no virtue. It is no. So it is actually operating from a very low moral standpoint. This is what I have to say about India, that the casualties, the civilian lives lost in Pakistan, this doesn't begin on the night of 6th and 7th of May. I'll also come to the legal dimensions of it, but I want to just make you navigate through a few points so that I would be able to build my legal argument in a better way. So what is India doing? Just as my two colleagues mentioned right before me, India is playing by the book of Israel and US as well, where they are now engaged in surgical strikes, precision strikes, assassination attempts, not just in Pakistan. They're also being involved in doing that in the West as well. And you're very much aware of how the RAW was operating in carrying these death jobs in US and Canada against the Sikh separatist leaders. So basically, India is flexing its muscles. India was under the impression that it is a superpower in making. So that is why now India started playing by the books of US and Israel. And now there are important points for us to understand that why is it now playing by that book, and why is it why does it keep harping on the terrorist mantra against Pakistan? So US basically redefined or reinterpreted the international law when it started its war on terror against Al-Qaeda. And that was a non-state actor organization. And that's when they started giving interpretations to the right of self-defense. Israel again relied on it, and they started this entire campaign on Hamas. And in doing so, it violated the entire corpus of the international law, the humanitarian law, and the human rights law. So basically, India was trying to embark on similar military adventurism against Pakistan. But it didn't work out in India's favor. It backfired. And then, now coming back to the point that why was India doing it? Why that false flag operation in Pahalgam, where there is more than 1 million Indian military deployed, and there is this intense network of intelligence agencies, and yet India has not been able to come up with any plausible explanation that who carried out those attacks, who were the perpetrators, and who were responsible for that. So they remain till of today unknown, nameless people about which we have no clue. And Indians have no clue either. But they have this information about carrying out attacks across international borders. So there is this difference in this time, which is making this attack different than the 2016 and 2019 attacks, is that always India has been in the habit of exploiting gray zone, which is the line of control between the two sides of Kashmir. So this time, India had the audacity to attack Pakistan across the international border at Murid K and Bawalpur. You're all aware of that. So what was Indian government, the BJP government, trying to achieve out of it? So the BJP government, actually, it has been carrying out these terrorist incidents within Pakistan as they follow the quotidian ideology of bleed the enemy from within. And also they try to give this perspective that your neighbor is your natural enemy. So we, Pakistan, since we share borders with India and all the other neighboring countries to India, they are the natural enemies. They have this Shankian ideology that they follow. And then they also have this ideology that your neighbor's neighbor is your natural ally. So that is why they keep using the Afghanistan's territory to keep launching attacks on Pakistan. So basically, they have been trying to do this false flag operation in Pahalgam for the optics of their internal audience. Elections are approaching. They want to have another war frenzy within the country, another hyper-nationalist frenzy that they want to drag their population into. And then they have been declaring these locations in Pakistan as hubs of terrorism. And you can all see, the international media has seen as well, that they were mosques. They're places where civilians were living. There were families that were living there. So India is basically trying to play with the sentiments of their people, make them ask and push for another war. And that's what the Modi government did. They made another war on Pakistan. And they were already giving these blatant and loud war-mongering rhetoric against Pakistan after they had bought those 4.5 generation Rafale aircrafts. So now the interesting point is that they could not reach at any conclusive or very conclusively, decisively successful outcomes. So that is when India felt that they could not assuage their civilian population's feelings, and now they started targeting the civilian population within Pakistan for the optics of their people. So basically, if I come back to my point that how come India is aware that these points that they term as hubs of terrorism across the border, they're aware of terrorism, perpetrating terrorism within Indian territory from them, but they are not aware of who carried out the Pahalgam attacks 200 and 300 kilometers within across the line of control. They are not aware of that. And they have clearly and very loudly rejected any offers that Pakistan has made to them of joint investigations. And another point that India has been, why do I call it a morally very low or weak enemy? Because if you look at the media, apart from spreading fake news and disinformation that they were very shamelessly doing, they were also celebrating the death of the child Irtiza, whose picture is right behind me. I myself saw this media celebrating the death of that 7-year-old boy. So this is the level of their moral degradation. They operate from a level of low morality. So that is why I would say that Pakistan has actually been dealing with an enemy which is absolutely immoral. Now, if I say that, how do the Indian the lobbyists, their diplomats, their policymakers, how do they legitimize their attacks on Pakistan? So basically, they have been following and relying on the definitions that were given by US strategists in the aftermath of the 9/11. That is that they have the right to use force against a state which was unwilling or unable to control these militant groups from within their territory. So basically, this rationale provides them with the legitimacy to carry out preemptive strikes against these supposed terrorists in Pakistan. And according to them, they were trying to curb terrorist activities that were emanating from Pakistani territories. So basically, the principle is that if a state is either unwilling or incapable of preventing terrorist groups within its borders from launching attacks, then the other nations have the right to exercise self-defense beyond conventional limits. And that's what the Indians try to do. And what options do Pakistan have to to exploit or exhaust with respect to the international forums. I don't think that there are many options available to Pakistan. Practically, they would not be of much help unless Pakistan is having a very robust diplomacy and it is coming with a lot of economic strength, such as you are all aware that the entire international law, the human rights perspectives, the humanitarian law perspectives, they have been selectively applicable in the last 1 decade across the globe. And who has more financial muscle, who has more military muscle, that matters. So basically, India has been playing as on this status that it has been enjoying as a counterweight to the Chinese influence. So basically, the West was ready to forgive India for any sort of human rights violations, any violation of the humanitarian law or the international law. The West would forgive it. So, but interestingly, the entire relation between the West and India has nosedived in the aftermath of the May 2025 India and Pakistan clash. I think I've taken more time. Okay, I can wind up. So basically, Pakistan and India are not signatories to the Rome Statute. Therefore, but still, Pakistan can refer the case to ICC if I take in the precedent from Darfur case. And then Pakistan has been on the UNSC presidentship in July, just as Rahman mentioned. So Pakistan had the forum to promote its case on UNSC forum, and then ICJ as well. Pakistan and India have already been in ICJ on the question of Kulbhushan Yadav. I think Pakistan can do more to utilize these legal forums. It should be one of the options, and also diplomatic muscle should be another option. And the third option, which is, I think, very, very important, that we should be internally strong. We should have a cohesive narrative from coming out from within the country. We should not be allowing ourselves to be fragmented. And then the institutional strength within Pakistan, economic strength that should come from within Pakistan, that is of paramount importance. And just as Rahman Saab mentioned, that our international outreaches to the international media houses should be very, very strong so that we can rely on our own narrative being propelled. So all the Reuters, all the news that comes from Al Jazeera, they say that Pakistan claimed this and India claimed this. They didn't try to validate Pakistan's claim in respect for the Dassault Aviation that is being actually a company which is, I would call this entire clash as more of a politics of weapons and technology as well, where they were trying to protect the status or their reputation of the Western technology companies more than they were in a mood to give the true and valid news. So basically, that is also very important, that we should have a good media outreach. And another important thing that I really, really feel as an academic, that Pakistan should rely on its own lobbying firms in the US and the West, instead of giving money to the US lobbying firms who cannot do justice to our narrative, our presentation of facts. And India has been relying heavily on that. And that's how it sold its narrative of being a counterweight to the Chinese influence. Though it is debunked, though it doesn't hold any ground any longer, but Pakistan should be more reliant on its own lobbying firms. I think I should end it here. I didn't give any coherent argument to my presentation to you today because two of my colleagues took all the legal arguments that I had prepared for you. So instead of the legal jargon, I tried to give you a bigger picture of how this entire conflict emerged and what were the dynamics of this conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now we have 3 presentations. I think we are now much wise on the subject. So we have a couple of minutes for Q&A. So if you can brief and to the point for questions. Sir. Naeem.
My name is Naeem Murtaza, and my question is to Ms. Mariam with regards to the events that you said that it started with Balochistan and all. My question is, basically, to my knowledge, I mean, this is historical, that Indira Gandhi, back when we lost a part of Pakistan, made a policy through its agency called RAW to keep Pakistan disrupted and to keep it in chaos throughout. Have we done enough to counter this? Because having been an alumni to the National Security Workshop and many other forums like ISSI, being a part of an active participant, I don't see much on how we have, like you mentioned, on the influence to the foreign media and so on. Have we failed through at the government level through our maybe agencies? I don't know. Surely I feel the media has not done enough. I mean, I don't know the answer. Maybe you can help me.
So thank you for raising this question. So I will correct myself. This didn't start with Balochistan. It started way earlier, before 1971. So the thing is that India has this strategic policy of following the Chankian ideology. So Chankian ideology talks about 3 types of wars. The open war that we just had with India in May, and before that in 71 and Kargil as well. And then it talks about 2 other types of wars, the silent war and a proxy war. So the silent war is the type of war that India has been waging on Pakistan for the last 2.5 decades. Wherever I go in the world, and some of you would have noticed that the Indians are always talking about Pakistan being a bad economy, about being a terrorist state. So these are psychological operations. These are the silent types of war, the disinformation that they are waging against Pakistan. And the third is the proxy that they are carrying, waging against Pakistan and Balochistan, and way before that in the East Pakistan crisis as well. So you're right, basically, that India has been very strategically, very cohesively, very concertedly targeting Pakistan, and it has done so, and it has been to a great extent successful as well. So what I see that there is this lack of coordinated, concerted efforts amongst the Pakistani institutions, whether you see the Foreign Office, whether you see the political elites in the country, the media, and the military strategists as well. They should keep it at the forefront that India is the primary threat that Pakistan has to face. That is one point. India in itself being a threat to us. Another point is that it is threat to us because the other powers are also using India as a weight. It's a net security provider in the region, according to the Indo-Pacific policy that has been chalked out by US, and it has been having access to the weapons market and defense export production markets of the West as well, which now I think that it has now a paradigm shift, and it is now again relying on Russia. But the thing is that India has been setting itself as the greatest democracy, the biggest democracy in the world, and being a state which is taking active steps to eradicate the terrorism, or being a proponent of liberal markets. All of these things, they have been based on reputation and a goodwill that India has created for itself in front of the Western audience. Though they are not, there are not many indicators to validate this claim. And now the relationship that has nosedived in the face of this strategic autonomy or diplomatic autonomy that India keeps talking about, it is because India didn't take a stance on the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, number one. Number two, it is always quiet, and it is always trying to stay neutral when it comes to something that is of import to the West. So now they can now see through the India's policy of opportunism. They're profiteering, they're opportunists, they're trying to get benefits, short-term benefits out of all of its relationship, and not ready to give in. So this is actually not something that Pakistan has done to bring to the light in front of the world. It is India's own doing, and in the Operation Sindoor as well, India actually shot itself in its own feet. Pakistan can capitalize on the fault lines that have been created within India. It is dealing with insurgencies. It has economic problems as well. It has military problems as well. It is a very fragmented society. Pakistan should capitalize on all of these fault lines that exist within India with a concerted effort to counter the Indian influence in this region. So basically, the entire myth of India being a tiger or a top dog in Asia, that has come to nothing, not with Pakistan's effort to counter it, but with India's own follies that have been laid bare or exposed to the international world. So you're right that there is something that we can do more in order to counter that threat that we face from India.
Thank you, Mariam. Ji. Amir Jangir.
My question is to Awais Sahab. You mentioned Article 51 and it having a threshold. My question is that what is that threshold? Killing of one civilian, killing of 10 people, killing of 100 people? How and when a crime becomes a human right issue and then it becomes a war crime? So, your thoughts?
Thank you very much for the question. Just going into this element. So the threshold is the language in Article 51 is an armed attack. Okay, and an armed attack, we have to determine what is an armed attack. Is it pushing through proxies? Is it providing arms to a group that can go? Is it sending your own forces? Military forces in uniforms attacking. So we have decisions by the International Court of Justice, ICJ, in Nicaragua and a number of others, where there's a very strong link that has to be created, right, between the state itself being commanding and actually taking tactical decisions of the on-ground thing. So simply sending forces in is not enough. Even simply funding forces is not enough to create that Article 51 thing. Secondly, what type of attack takes place? So an armed attack has to have a certain level of threshold. It can't simply be a bunch of shooting. It has to have a certain level of gravity, seriousness, casualties, all of these factors. Again, there is no formula clear cut that you just input it into a calculator and you'll get a result. These are subjective decisions at times that different states in different situations will have to make. And that's really how an armed attack. So your next question is, when does, the same action can be a human right violation, but if the circumstances change, it can also be a war crime. And if the circumstances change further, the same action could also be genocide. Or if the circumstances are different, it could be a crime against humanity. The same act, right? Let's take murder, for example. If you're in a peacetime situation outside, somebody shoots somebody and kills them, that is murder. That's a crime. It is a human rights violation at best, and you have a legal process for it. If we're in a time of war and a soldier kills another soldier, right, that is legally permitted. But if a soldier kills a civilian, that is a war crime. So the same killing, the same act, right? Now, if that soldier was part of a systematic, pattern against a civilian population, and he had that intent, killing them, whether it was wartime or not, like soldiers within one's own country, right? That would be a crime against humanity. If that same soldier had the intent to eradicate a population, his intention only, and he did that single killing, it would be genocide. So the same act can be multiple different things given the circumstances that prevail at that particular time. That's hopefully that answers that.
Thank you. Thank you. Good answer. Ji. Ji, Swas.
Sahib and also Chairman Sahib and the director of this program, sir, very nicely. And sir, I have written invitation, but not to watch the name of ma'am because that is very little form. That's not readable, sir, because that is converted into, sir, PDF. So therefore, I will address ma'am because ma'am, you have given a very patriot messages because we must be very patriot nation, very self-made nation. If we respect ourselves in the form of that poetry by Iqbal, कि आई तायर ला होती उस रिस्क से मौत अच्छी जिस रिस्क से आती हो परवाज में कोताही नहीं तेरा नशेबन कसर सुल्तानी के गुंबद पर तो शाही है बसेरा कर पहाड़ों की चट्टानी तो मैम एक्चुअली दिस इज द वर्डिक्ट ऑफ हदीस मन आरफ नफ्स फकद आरफ रब्बा so I will categorize you. You're not a pessimist. You're not a optimist, but really you are a realist personality. This is my humble submission. If you want to add something, please. Thank you. I'm Saraj, basically legal profession.
Okay, thank you. I respect your perspective on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ji, last question from here. Ji, up.
Hello, my name is Syed Kazim, and I have a question from OS Anwar Sahab. I want a legal dimension on weaponization, the sort of weaponization India is pursuing post Operation Sindoor, particularly in the domain of hypersonic missiles. So there is no particular regime or agreement between India and Pakistan which can, cap such punitive capabilities. So beyond the narrative game, what can Pakistan do in terms of legal dimension to, to show India as a sort of a destabilizer in the region, because India is a destabilizer in the region. Thank you.
I agree with you. India is a destabilizer. So the issue of hypersonics is, I mean, whenever you try to regulate weapons, you first have to see whether you want to regulate weapons, right? Is this something in Pakistan's interest? Do hypersonics maybe help us if we develop our own capability? Right now, my understanding is, and I could be wrong, I'm not a weapons or military specialist, though I have a keen interest in these matters. But it could be that hypersonics, we have Chinese hypersonic missiles, which we apparently use to take out the Indian S-400, air defense system. So we have we have hypersonics. Do we want to regulate necessarily this thing? Yes, they were used against us in a number of these attacks, especially on the Air Force bases that India attacked. So that's a question. Secondly, is it even possible? I don't think, I mean, if you want to bind a state, you have to have their agreement to be bound, right? International law works on, voluntary acceptance of these terms. I don't think India has already developed these. And not only has it developed hypersonics, but BrahMos is exported, right? It makes money for India. So I don't think there's any real scope of regulating it like that. What you can have is, say, a multilateral treaty on, and there are missile treaties and schemes, but those are used more against Pakistan and us expanding our missile arsenal than it is on India and doing it there. So I hope that answers that. I just wanted to touch upon a few issues that were brought up. One is what really came out. I agree with Dr. Mariam Fatma that there are no victories. There's only casualties. But if you want to see what changed afterwards, did Pakistan change its foreign policy, its the way it moves? No. But what we saw was India went to China. It ran to China rather, and it essentially gave up a lot of territory in an agreement with China. Right. This was something that was against their foreign policy. So a result, and I'm making the link. This doesn't necessarily have to be. I'm sure there are a number of factors, especially Trump, being upset with the Indians. So the Indians went straight to the Chinese, gave up this territory, maybe to deflect, their support for us, or not to be supporting them there. But it changed the way India operated. That's one thing. Secondly, if we look at, say, Jay Shankar, many call him the cerebral foreign minister. I think he's had a miserably failed foreign policy. Is India safer now than before he was there? They've, had a bloody nose after this particular conflict from Pakistan. They've lost that sheen, that veneer that the Rafale jets used to have, and that threat that they could pose there. Bangladesh has gotten completely out of hand. In fact, they misplayed and overplayed their hand so terribly there. China and territory, they've handed over territory essentially to a hostile nation. Now, if that isn't a defeat, if that isn't a weakening of your foreign policy, then I don't know what is. And all of that aside, their relationship with their closest ally supposedly is in tatters at the moment, right? With the US. And this has all been under his watch. So next time we call him cerebral, we should be careful when we say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank the panelists, Muhammad Awais Anwar, Dr. Mariam Fatma, and Mr. Rahman Azhar for making great contribution. And I think I'll request all of you to remain seated. So there'll be some change on the head table only. And if you have any questions, I think we have a man who has answer of all the questions, Mr. Ahmed Blashif Sab, in the last session. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining us. I thank the Dr. Tal Shabir and the esteemed speakers for their valuable thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the concluding session. We are lucky to have Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, former Minister of Law, Justice, Parliamentary Affairs, and Human Rights, and he also heads the Desai Society for International Law. So I request our guest of honor, Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, for his keynote address. So over to you, sir.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम सुहेल महमूद साहब और खालिद साहब veteran diplomats हैं. We have a lot of respect for the work that they have done in this area. They already have so much of contribution on this proposition relating to bilateral issues of India that they are themselves in their own right very solid resource persons, and they can, I think, address audience on these issues for hours. So I'm grateful to them to allow me this opportunity and window to address the audience. And I must also put on record my appreciation for an excellent presentation by Awais, by Dr. Mariam, and Rehan Azhar. Awais briefly mentioned that he worked with me. He is part of the generation of young lawyers that I encouraged to take up international law as a full-time profession. So it's a very rare thing. When I had come on the scene as a young lawyer, talking of academics was considered something very obsolete. And people would make fun of me when I would say I'm setting up a think tank on international law 30 years ago in Lahore. And they would laugh virtually that इस मुल्क में तो local law का नहीं पता तो आप international law की बातें कर रहे हैं. तो मुझे याद है मैंने उस वक्त कहा था कई लोगों को कि आई एम डिटर्मिन्ड कि पाकिस्तान को फ्यूचर में इंटरनेशनल लॉ की अवेयरनेस की ज़रूरत होगी. पाकिस्तान के पॉलिसी मेकर्स को, पाकिस्तान की सियासी हुकूमतों को लीगल इनपुट चाहिए होगा अबाउट द डिसीजंस एंड द प्रोपोजिशंस दैट दे आर हैंडलिंग. इस वक्त हम अमेरिका के साथ हम नवा हैं, हमारे ऊपर उस नौइयत की सख्ती नहीं आती, लेकिन आगे चल के यही बेशुमार इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशन इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स जो हमने साइन रेटिफाई किए हुए हैं, हमें इनकी जवाबदेही देना होगी. और हमें इसकी बाबत वी विल रिक्वायर स्पेशलाइज इंटरप्रिटेशन, बिकॉज सिर्फ इंटरनेशनल लॉ में अंग्रेज़ी का इस्तेमाल सफिशेंट नहीं होता, बल्कि उसकी पीछे एक जूरिस्प्रूडेंस होती है, उन अल्फाज के पीछे, उन फ्रेजेस के पीछे. वो डिसिप्लिन ऑफ इंटरनेशनल लॉ आपको सिखाता है और उसकी बुनियाद पर फिर यू आर एबल टू बिल्ड अप योर पोजीशंस ग्लोबली. और जब आज से 15 साल पहले आई स्टार्टेड एनकरेजिंग यंग लॉयर्स कि दे मस्ट टेक इंटरेस्ट इन इंटरनेशनल लॉ, दे मस्ट यूज देयर टैलेंट, एंड ऑन द साइड लाइन अपार्ट फ्रॉम प्रैक्टिसिंग एज अ लॉयर दे शुड don another hat of an academic, and within academic they should choose international law या इंटरनेशनल लॉ की सब स्पीशीज को चूज करें जो पाकिस्तान के लिए बहुत क्रूशल होंगी. उसमें इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी लॉ है, यूनिक लॉ, पेटेंट का, कि कैसे आपने मोनेटाइज करना है अपनी प्रोडक्ट को. उसी बुनियाद पे फिर ज्योग्राफिकल इंडिकेटर्स के कवानीन बने. उसी में ट्रेड के लॉज हैं कि WTO की अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए आपको लीगल एक्सपर्ट्स यंग चाहिए जो अंडरस्टैंड करें कि कैसे आपने अपील्स फाइल करके बासमती से लेके बेशुमार इश्यूज को एड्रेस करना, कैसे आपने वो टाइटल्स क्लेम करने हैं. उसके अलावा आपको लॉ ऑफ द सी के ऊपर महारत चाहिए, पीपल हु कुड अंडरस्टैंड कि नेवी को क्या असिस्टेंस चाहिए लॉ ऑफ द सी की इंटरप्रिटेशन करते हुए, हाई सीज की, रिसोर्सेज की, सी बेड अथॉरिटी की. सो आई एम सो हैप्पी कि ये और जमाल और इनके एक और दोस्त साद और चंद और नौजवान, दे केम फोर्थ एंड दे सेड कि inspired by international law, they said we will not go down the practice route, we'll exclusively invest our energies in international law. And I'm so happy to see him speak, so happy to see Jamal and others contribute so meaningfully at a policy making level. And then there is a number of dozens of bright names that come to my mind. I wouldn't spend time. They've moved on to various think tanks, both locally and internationally, and they are serving Pakistan's interest. My future effort is to find ways to get these young lawyers employment tracking in international organizations, legal divisions, because each international organization has a legal division. And there are over 50,000 international organizations in one way or the other. So whether it's IAEA, whether it's ICAO, whether it's United Nations, UNICEF, anything, young lawyers need to be applicants when posts are advertised of legal divisions, and these legal divisions have a crucial role to play. And in Pakistan, as you are aware, Pakistan is entitled of its share by virtue of a geographical block to have certain places there. The purpose of giving you this entire context is that it's a complete discipline जिसकी अल्फाज जिसकी लैंग्वेज में ग्लोबल ताकतें गुफ्तगू करती हैं. ग्लोबल इंटरेक्शन इज बेस्ड, उसकी जो ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज है वो इंटरनेशनल लॉ है. सो अब अगर आपने किसी पे हमला करना है तो आपने ये नहीं कहना मैं हमला करने जा रहा हूँ. आप कह रहे हैं आई एम यूजिंग माई राइट टू एक्सरसाइज राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिफेंस पर्सुएंट टू आर्टिकल 51. बड़ी माकूल गुफ्तगू लगती है कि आप किसी को हमला भी करने जा रहे हैं लेकिन आपके पास एक लीगल बुनियाद है, और उस लीगल बुनियाद के पैरामीटर्स क्या हैं. या किसी मुल्क ने दूसरे पर आपने स्पाई पकड़ा गया है, तो अब जो नोट वर्बैल में या ऑफिशियल स्टेटमेंट में मिनिस्ट्री की जो बात आएगी वो इट्स अ ब्रीच ऑफ प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नॉन इंटरवेंशन. पकड़ा स्पाई गया है, एक आम आदमी उसको रीड कर रहा है कि स्पाई को पकड़ा, लेकिन दर हकीकत वो ब्रॉड प्रिंसिपल्स की बड़ी सीरियस वायलेशन के तौर पर तस्वर किया जाएगा. सो मेरे कहने से मुराद ये कि यू नीड people who command the knowledge of this language, who understand the nuances of this language, and then they can feed to diplomats, they can feed to ministers, they can meet to assemblies and so forth. तो ये एक बहुत and I'm glad कि फिर उसके बाद आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ये रेप्लिकेट हुआ, एनडीयू में सेंटर ऑफ एक्सीलेंस फॉर इंटरनेशनल लॉ बना, और बाकी इदारे भी अब उस पर काम करें. लॉ मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ Foreign Affairs is one which needs perhaps the most. Ministry of Law, Ministry of Defense, Planning Commission, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Industries. They need young, bright lawyers who should be working for them individually. So ये तो है जो 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 इंटरनेशनल लॉ का स्पेक्ट्रम है. लेकिन इससे ऊपर एक और चीज़ है, और वो है जहाँ पर इंटरनेशनल लॉ या यंग लॉयर्स या मेरे जैसे वकला का मैंडेट फोरफीट हो जाता है, होना चाहिए, और वो रुक जाता है. और वो है पॉलिटिकल डिसीजन मेकिंग ऑन एनी इशू. जो पॉलिटिशियंस हैं, जो मुल्क की नुमाइंदगी करते हैं, जो पॉलिटिकल फोर्सेस हैं, उनका एक अपना विजन होता है. हो सकता है वो कहें वैस साहब, बिलाल साहब बहुत अच्छी बात कर रहे हैं, अभी हमने ये काम नहीं करना फॉर द टाइम भी. अभी हम चाहते हैं कि हालात ज़रा रीजन में बेहतर होने की तरफ हमारे इम्कानात नज़र आ रहे, तो हम इतना एग्रेसिव पॉस्चर नहीं लेना, तो अभी आप ज़रा आंच को नीचा कर दें. सो मैं और मेरे कॉलीग्स वी कैन प्रोवाइड मल्टीपल ऑप्शंस कि लीगली क्या करना चाहिए, मगर जिस तरह मैंने कहा कि वी राइटली ऑट टू यील्ड टू अ पॉलिटिकल डिसीजन मेकिंग. कि पॉलिटिशियंस अगर ये समझते हैं कि उन्होंने अमेरिका के साथ ताल्लुकात पॉइंट एक्स पे रखने हैं, और मेरी जो लीगल स्ट्रैटेजी ABC है वो उस पॉइंट एक्स को कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट करती है, तो हो सकता है वो कहेंगे आइडिया तो बहुत अच्छा है, अभी हमने इसको भी आप जरा दराज में रखिए लीगल ओपिनियन को. या उनको कहीं नजर आए तो कहिए बहुत ज़बरदस्त आइडिया, इसको अब लाइए, हमने इससे प्रेशर बिल्ड करना है और उस प्रेशर को हमने आगे बढ़ाना है. सो जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट सिंदूर है, इसमें जो सिविलियन कैजुअलिटीज़ की अकाउंटेबिलिटी का इशू है, वो भी इसी तनाजुर में ही आगे बढ़ेगा या नहीं बढ़ेगा. एज द केस में भी मैं बता सकता हूं क्या करना चाहिए, लेकिन क्या पॉलिटिकल पोजीशनिंग है, होनी चाहिए, ये एक अलग सवाल है या नहीं है, ये मेरे दस्तरस से बाहर का इशू, और होना भी मेरे दस्तरस से बाहर चाहिए. समटाइम्स द पॉलिटिशियंस हैव अ लार्जर वर्ल्ड व्यू and they genuinely believe in what they are doing, so we'll have to accept that position. उसको एक तरफ रखते हुए, उस लार्जर रिक्वायरमेंट को रखते हुए, फॉर एग्जाम्पल पाकिस्तान क्या कर सकता है, और पाकिस्तान जैसा कोई और मुल्क क्या कर सकता है जब सिविलियन कैजुअलिटीज हों. पाकिस्तान जैसा मुल्क, अगर आपने वॉर कराया, ICC में आप नहीं जा सकते, वी आर नॉट अ पार्टी, तो आपको कौन रोक रहा है कि आप ट्राइब्यूनल पाकिस्तान में कानून साजी के थ्रू बना लें, डिटर्मिनिंग कि नेचर ऑफ अटैक में जो कैजुअलिटीज़ हुई हैं उनके क्या क्लेम्स हैं और वो नेचर क्या है. यही ट्राइब्यूनल कश्मीर के लोगों के लिए दाद रसी का फोरम प्रोवाइड कर सकता है. सो एक ट्राइब्यूनल पाकिस्तान में पाकिस्तान के कानून के नीचे कायम किया जा सकता है रिगार्डिंग एट्रॉसिटीज़. फॉर एग्जांपल उसका स्कोप डिफाइन कर लेना है. एक उसका है 6-7 हेड, जिस ICC का अगर आप चार्टर उठाएं तो मुख्तलिफ कैटेगरीज हैं. तो एक कैटेगरी वो हो सकती है जहां लोग افیکٹیز کے طور پر یہ وکٹمز بن جائیں آف نان انٹرونشن کی پرنسپل کی وائلیشن پارٹ آف انڈیا. سو اس میں ان کو رائٹ دیا جائے کہ وہ رائٹ کہ پہلے ڈٹرمینیشن کر دی جائے کہ اس کی ایٹریبیوشن کس کی. ایٹریبیوشن انٹرنیشنل لا کے ایک اور پرنسپل ہے. جو آپ نے مریم نے کہا کہ بسوں سے اتار کر انہوں نے مارا, بلوچستان کے کئی واقعات کا ذکر کیا, وہ وکٹم کہاں جائیں؟ اس کے بہن بھائی کہاں جائیں جس کو مار دیا گیا دیکھ کر؟ وہ کس جگہ اپنی جگہ؟ وہ تو ریاست نے ایف آئی آر کاٹی, یعنی کہ وقوع ہوا ہے, وقوع میں اے بی سی انفارچونیٹلی وہ فوت ہو گئے, ان کو مار دیا گیا. اس کا بھائی کہتا ہے کہ جی میرے ساتھ میرے بھائی کا کیا قصور تھا, اس کو انسنٹلی مارا گیا. اس قصور کو یا اس وکٹم کی پلائٹ کو ڈاکیومنٹ کرنے کے لیے ٹریبیونل کو جورسڈکشن دی جائے کہ وہ اس کو ڈاکیومنٹ کرے. اسی طرح اگر وہ ایٹریبیوشن کے پوائنٹ آف ویو سے یہ اسیس کر لے کہ اگر انٹیلیجنس انٹرسیپٹس خود یہ بتا رہے ہیں کہ کسی صاحب نے برسل سے فون کر کے کسی کو کہا بلوچستان کسی قبضے میں قصبے میں کہ تم یہ دھماکہ کرو اور یہ ایکشن کرو تو تمہیں اتنے پیسے فلانی جگہ دبئی سے ریمٹ ہو کے پہنچ جائیں گے, تو اگر وہ ٹریبیونل ہوگا تو اس کے سامنے سارا مواد ہوگا, تو وہ ایٹریبیوشن کی چین کو کمپلیٹ کر لے گا اپنی فائنڈنگ کے فریم ورک میں. سو دیٹ ول فنکشن, اس کے ملٹیپل فنکشن ہو جائیں گے. وہ یہ ڈٹرمن بھی کر رہا ہوگا کہ سویلینز کو جو وکٹم مارا گیا ہے, ایف آئی آر کے علاوہ یہ ایٹریبیوشن اس کی جو ہے وہ انڈین را کو جا رہی ہے یا انٹیلیجنس ایجنسی کو جا رہی ہے, اینڈ سو آن سو فورتھ. سو میرے کہنے سے مراد یہ کہ فورم کافی زیادہ ہے. یہ تو ہو گیا جوڈیشل فورم کا فریم ورک. اے جے کے میں بھی آزاد جموں اینڈ کشمیر گورنمنٹ کا اپنا ایک لیگل فریم ورک ہے, ان کے پاس بھی قانون سازی کے اختیارات ہیں. سو اے جے کے گورنمنٹ جو ہے وہ کوئی قانون بنا سکتی ہے جس میں وہ اٹراسٹیز جو وائلیشنز کنڈکٹ جو انڈین سائٹ پر مسلمانوں کے ساتھ ہو رہی ہیں اس کو ڈاکیومنٹ کرنے کا ایفیڈیوٹس. اب تو ایک زمانہ تھا کہ آپ کو ایفیڈیوٹ لینے کے لیے جانا پڑتا تھا اس شخص سے خود ملنے کے لیے. مجھے یاد ہے پروفیسر شریف بسیانی شکاگو میں پڑھاتے تھے, تو ان کو یونائٹڈ نیشن نے سربیا میں چیف انویسٹیگیٹر تعینات کیا, تو مجھے ان کے دفتر میں جانے کا اتفاق ہوا. تو انہوں نے وار روم لکھا ہوا تھا, میں اندر گیا, مجھے لے کر گئے تو سٹیکس آف ڈاکیومنٹس پڑے ہوئے تھے. تو انہوں نے کہا کہ یہ سائٹ کی میپ تھا, اوپر سائٹ کا میپ نیچے, کہ یہ ایفیڈیوٹس ہیں جو میں نے خود جا کر مقتولین کے ورثہ سے لیے ہیں کہ سچ اینڈ سچ سچ اینڈ سچ. اب تو زوم پر آپ بارہمولہ میں کسی سے فون پہ بات کر کے وہ آپ کو بتا سکتا ہے جی میرے محلے میں میرے علاقے میں جانتا ہوں. تو یو اسٹارٹ ڈاکیومنٹنگ دیٹ, اینڈ دیٹ ڈاکیومنٹیشن ول ڈاکیومنٹ کے آئی ایچ ایل کی وائلیشنز وہاں کیسے ہو رہی ہیں. جو آپ نے آکیوپائنگ آرمی کی بھی کسی نے بات کی, اس کے فریم ورک میں رہتے وہ کیسے وائلیٹ کر رہے ہیں, بیکاز آکیوپائنگ آرمی کا جو پیراڈائم ہے وہ انٹرنیشنل ہیومینیٹیرین لا کا وائلیشن ہے, اور وہ وائلیشن جو ہے وہ بھی ڈاکیومنٹ ہم نے پراپر طریقے لیگلی نہیں کی. ہمارے ڈوزیئرز شاید موجود ہیں کسی جگہ ہمارے اداروں کے پاس یا فارن آفس کے پاس, لیکن وہ دکھانے کے لیے ہیں جو ڈپلومیٹس کو, لیکن جو لیگل ڈاکیومنٹیشن ہوتی ہے اس کے لیے ہمیں یہ پراپر ایک اہتمام کرنا ضروری ہے. اسی طرح سے جو آپ کے اور ایشوز آ جاتے ہیں, اس سے ایسوسیٹڈ ایشوز اور بھی آ جاتے ہیں. ایک ایشو میرا خیال ہے جس کی طرف توجہ دلانا ضروری ہے, ریحان نے تھوڑی سی اس پہ بات کی, کہ اس کانفلکٹ کو آپ نے کیسے انالائز کرنا ہے. سیلف ڈیفenس ہے, ریپرائزل ہے, کاؤنٹر میجر ہے, یا کیا ہے, یا مختلف, یا شاید سب کچھ تھا. ہر دن صورتحال بدل رہی تھی, ایک اٹیک کا ہم جواب دے رہے تھے, کہیں وہ اٹیک کر رہے تھے. تو یہ بھی انالیسس کرنا ضروری ہے کہ اس کا لیگل آپ کہہ لیں آڈٹ, ہر ایکشن کا لیگل آڈٹ, کہ جب انہوں نے پہلگام کی بنیاد پر آئی ڈبلیو ٹی کو سسپینڈ کیا, یہ عمل سسپینشن کا کیا کہلائے گا؟ کاؤنٹر میجر کہلائے گا, ریپرائزل کرائے گا, نان کوئرسو میجر کرائے گا. پھر اس کے بعد 3-4 اور سٹیپس ہوئے, اوور فلائٹ رائٹس کی سسپینشن ہوئی دونوں ملکوں نے کی, ڈاؤن گریڈ کیا گیا ہائی کمیشنز کے آفیسرز کو. اس کو کیا کہیں گے, اس عمل کو کیا کہیں گے؟ پھر اس کے بعد اب سسپینشن انہوں نے کی کہ جی ہم وی آر ہولڈنگ اٹ ان بینس. جو ان کا لیگل آرگومنٹ تھا وہ دو تھے, ایک تو چینج سرکمسٹانسز کا بعد میں تھا جو لیٹرز میں پیچھے سے چلا آ رہا تھا 2023 سے آنورڈ, لیکن بٹ ایڈیشن دے ور سیئنگ دس از ان ریئیکشن ٹو دا پہلگام تھنگ. جب تک پاکستان کمپلیٹلی تائب نہیں ہوتا ٹیررزم سے، اس وقت تک ہم اس کو ہولڈ ان ابینس کریں گے. سو کیا آپ ٹریٹی کی ہولڈنگ ان ابینس ہو سکتی ہے آن این آئسولیٹڈ ایکٹ آف ٹیررزم جس کی ایٹریبیوشن بھی ابھی ڈٹرمن نہیں ہوئی اور ابھی تک انویسٹیگیشن بھی نہیں ہوئی؟ کوشچن مارک. سو یہ ایک سیپریٹ. سو اسی طرح اگر آپ کاؤنٹ کرتے جائیں ہر سٹیپ کو، برہموس کے اٹیکس ہوئے یا ہم نے ان کے 6 جہاز گرائے یا انہوں نے پھر ہمارے کیے، اور اس اٹیک کی سیکوینس میں آپ نے ایک ایشو اٹھایا ہے جو آج کی سیمینار کا ہے کہ سویلینز جو اٹیک ہوئے ان کا کیا ہے، اور سویلینز جو مرید کے میں، بہاولپور میں اور باقی جگہوں پر یہ اٹیکس ہوتے رہے ان کا کیا ہے. ان کی بابت ایک اور سوال جو ہے وہ جنم لیتا ہے، اور یہ ڈسکشن اور تھوڑی سی سٹیپ بیک چلی جاتی ہے. کیا اس کو لے کے جانا ہے؟ سوال یہ ہے کہ وہ لوگ جن کی بابت یہ کہا گیا کہ وہاں نان اسٹیٹ ایکٹرز ایسے موجود ہیں جو انڈیا پر حملہ آور ہوتے رہے، کشمیر کی سٹرگل میں حصہ لیتے رہے، وہ ٹارگٹ ہم کر رہے ہیں. چلیے ہم یہاں پر رک گئے، لیکن اگر آپ تھوڑا سا سے پیچھے جائیں تو بڑی دلچسپ ڈیبیٹ کھل جاتی ہے. اور وہ ڈیبیٹ یہ ہے کہ رائٹ ٹو سیلف ڈٹرمینیشن کی موومنٹ کی سپورٹ انٹرنیشنل لاء میں جائز ہے کہ نہیں ہے. اور اگر یہ ہے تو پھر کیا وہ نان اسٹیٹ ایکٹرز جو تھے کیا وہ انٹرنیشنل لاء کے مطابق کام کر رہے تھے جب انہوں نے وہ کام کیا؟ کیا ان میں سے کچھ کو سزا بھی ہو گئی تھی، یا کیا وہ ایسا کام کر رہے تھے جو انٹرنیشنل لاء؟ اور جب ریاست نے فیصلہ کیا کہ ہم نے سپورٹ کو ودرا کرنا تو کیا وہ بازو ممنون ہو گئے؟ اینڈ دے کمپلائڈ ود دا لاء آف دا لینڈ. لیٹس سے اسٹیٹ سیٹ کہ جی ہمارا خیال ہے 80s میں 90s میں جو آپ نے کشمیر اسٹرگل کو سپورٹ دیتے تھے، یہاں سے لوگ جاتے تھے، وہ جائز تھا، انٹرنیشنل لاء کی وائلیشن نہیں تھی. اٹ واز دا رائٹ سپورٹ آپ کی جا سکتی تھی ان لوگوں کو. اور اس پہ بھی بے شمار لیگل ریفرنسز موجود ہیں جس میں لکھا گیا ہے، اور افغانستان کی کانٹیکسٹ سے مجھے سر 10 1986 میں امریکن جرنل آف انٹرنیشنل لاء میں ایک آرٹیکل ذہن میں آ رہا ہے. پروفیسر رائزمان جو تھے انہوں نے لکھا کہ نہ صرف سیلف ڈٹرمینیشن کی سپورٹ کو مدد کرنا جائز ہے بلکہ ان کو مدد زیادہ فراہم کرنا آرم اسٹرگل. He went that far. So what I am saying is that کشمیر کا گول پوسٹ کی تبدیلی کا ایشو بھی ہے، یونیفارم نیریٹو نہیں ہے، اٹ ہیز ٹو چینج کانسٹنٹلی. سو وہ پھر سوال آ جاتا ہے. اور پھر جب آپ نے ان کے خلاف لیٹ سے ان میں سے کچھ ایکٹرز نے ارسپانسبل ایکشنز کیا، بامبے میں گئے، مین لینڈ انڈیا میں اٹیکس کیے، دے آر offenses, دے آر کلیئرلی، وہ کوئی اسٹیٹ اسے سینکٹیفائی نہیں کر سکتی، نہ کرنا چاہیے. اس پر پاکستان کا کیا ری ایکشن تھا؟ کیا پاکستان نے ان کو ڈیفینڈ کیا یا پاکستان نے کیسز فائل کیے؟ پاکستان نے کیس فائل کیا. یہ کیس فائل کرنا از خود ایک رسپانسبل ریاست کے عمل کی ایویڈنس ہے. اس زمانے کے انٹیریئر منسٹر تھے، انہوں نے مجھ سے پوچھا کہ ہمیں بہت پریشر آ رہا ہے، ہم کیا دنیا کو ایکسپلین کریں کہ ہم کیا لکھوی وغیرہ کے. میں نے کہا آپ صرف جو اسٹیٹ ٹائٹل ہے نا کیس کا وہ ایکسپلین کر دیں. کہ نہیں کیسے؟ میں نے کہا ریاست بنام لکھوی، اسٹیٹ ورسز لکھوی، ہر کرمنل کیس کا یہ ہوتا ہے. اس کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ ریاست سمجھتی ہے کہ اس کی رائے میں، اس کی انویسٹیگیشن میں لکھوی صاحب ملزم ہے. اب وہ یہ میٹر جوڈیشل فورم پہ لے آئی ہے، اب سبجیکٹ ٹو ایویڈنس. ایویڈنس آپ کے پاس تھی، 3 دفعہ کوشش کی گئی کہ آپ ہمیں ایکسس دیں ان سپاہیوں تک، ان لوگوں تک جو جب یہ اترے تھے تو آپ نے ان کے بیانات لیے تھے، آپ نے نہیں دی. ہم نے اپنے وکیل کو، ڈیفنس لائر کو، خواجہ حارث کو ٹیم کے ساتھ انڈیا بھیجا، آپ نے ان کے ساتھ کوآپریشن نہیں کیا. تو ہم اس چیز کو بھی سیل نہیں کر سکے کہ بطور رسپانسبل ریاست وی ور ڈوئنگ آل دیٹ کوڈ بی ڈن اگینسٹ این irresponsible ایکٹ. سو میرے کہنے سے مراد یہ ہے کہ لیگل اس میں بے شمار پرتیں ہیں، بے شمار ایسپیکٹس ہے دیٹ نیڈ ٹو بی ایگزامنڈ فرام دیٹ پوائنٹ آف ویو. جو آرٹیکل 51 کا آپ نے اپنے اس میں ذکر کیا، جو آپ کا اوپننگ سٹیٹمنٹ تھا پہلے سیشن میں، سہیل صاحب نے ذکر کیا اس کا کہ آرٹیکل 51 UN چارٹر کا نہیں، آرٹیکل 51 کس چیز کا؟ ایڈیشنل پروٹوکول کا. جنیوا کنونشن جو ہیں، جس طرح اویس نے ایکسپلین کیا، ایک ہے لا جسٹیفائنگ دا یوز آف فورس. کس بنیاد میں آپ نے یہ فیصلہ کیا کہ آپ پاکستان پہ حملہ آور ہو جائیں گے؟ کس قانونی بنیاد پر آپ نے یہ فیصلہ کیا کہ آپ ایک ایبروگیٹ کر دیں گے یا اس کو ہولڈ ان ابینس کر دیں گے؟ یہ بنیاد تو پہلے آپ ایکسپلین کریں، اس کو تو جسٹیفائی کریں. وہ انڈیا نے کوئی نہیں کیا. اور one reason why they lost diplomatic shine is because of their blatant violation of international law. کوئی ملک دنیا کا، بہت کم ملک ہیں جو کہتے ہیں ہم کرنے جا رہے ہیں جی ٹریٹی کی وائلیشن یا ہم اس کو ہولڈ ان ابینس. ہر ملک کہتا ہے میری رائے میں، میری انٹرپریٹیشن اس ٹریٹی کی یہ ہے کہ میں یہ کر سکتا ہوں جو میں کر رہا ہوں. نو ون انہوں نے اون کیا ہولڈنگ ان ابینس کر رہے ہیں. دنیا نے सारी दुनिया के इंटरनेशनल लॉ है, जो भी लीगल डिविजन एडवाइस करते हैं अपने मुल्कों को, उन सब ने ये चीज़ अंदाज़ा लगा लिया कि ऐसा तो नहीं होता है। जो बाउंड्री ट्रीटीज़ की सैंक्टिटी होती है, वो ट्रीटीज़ जो पानी की डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, उनकी बेहद सैंक्टिटी होती है इंटरनेशनल लॉ में। इन्होंने आके खड़े खड़े कहा जी, तो ही इज़ ओपनिंग अ वेन्यू फॉर वॉर। सो आर्टिकल 51 की भी अगर आप इंटरप्रिटेशन देखें, तो उस आर्टिकल 51 में है कि आपने मिलिट्री एडवांटेज कौन सा लिया। भाई आपने एक काम किया, तो एडवांटेज कौन सा आपको मिला, उसका कोई जिक्र खैर नहीं है। सो वो जो अटैक्स हुए जिसमें हमारे सिविलियन कैजुअलिटीज हुई, बच्चों की, औरतों की, उनकी फैमिलीज रह रही थी, वो नॉन स्टेट एक्टर इंसान ही अंडरगोज चेंज। जब एक कॉन्विक्ट कन्विक्शन कंप्लीट कर लेता है, या एक शख्स जो है बरी हो जाता है, तो ही बिकम्स क्लीन। अगर उसने कुछ किया भी था और और उसने हिंदुस्तान में भी सेंटेंस सर्व कर लिया, जिस तरह यासीन मलिक साहब हैं, यासीन मलिक साहब वाज एन एक्टिविस्ट, ही वाज यूजिंग फोर्स 20 साल पहले। फिर उनके साथ वादा किया गया कि नहीं, आप फोर्स छोड़ के मेन स्ट्रीम पॉलिटिक्स में आ जाए तो हम अपने केसेस ड्रॉप कर देंगे, आप रिफॉर्म होंगे। तो वो रिफॉर्म हो गए, उन्होंने कहा ठीक है जी, मैं मेन स्ट्रीम पॉलिटिक्स में आ जाता हूँ। और उसके बाद उनके साथ दगा किया गया। अब वो जो पुराना एंटी टेररिज्म केस जो है वो रिवाइव करके उनमें उनको कहा गया कि जी इनको हम, जो मेरी राय में उसका एक और मकसद है, पॉसिबल उसका मकसद जो मुझे समझ में आता है वो ये है कि आपने एक लेवरेज क्रिएट करना है कुलभूषण यादव के लिए। आपने अल्लाह रहम करे कोई ऐसी बात, एक्सट्रीम सेंटेंस प्रोनाउंस करके आपने फिर निगोशिएट करना है। उन्होंने, that seems to be the plan. But leaving that aside, so coming back, I would just like to summarize that the civilian casualty is a serious development. This is one of the several legal issues in the four-day thing that we are talking about. We can whip this very well from a legal point of view, from an international point of view, or it is up to the policymakers how they want and to what extent they want to take this. As far as law is concerned, that fully supports Pakistan's views. Law simply says that you will protect the civilians no matter what kind of actions you are undergoing, whether it is an armed conflict or a non-international armed conflict. So I'll stop here. It has been a pleasure to interact with you, and I hope we can arrive at some concrete conclusions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the comprehensive talk. Now I request our Chairman, Board of Governors, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, for his concluding remarks. So over to you, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Guest of honor, Mr. Amr Bilal Sufi, Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, Director General ISSI, other distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. You would agree with me that we had a crash course on international law, particularly pertaining to the protection of civilians in multi-domain conflicts. During any conflict, of course, the military people are the targets, but civilians are a collateral damage, they suffer. Not only directly, but indirectly also. Directly is when they are killed or they are injured or, but when infrastructure is destroyed, it affects the economic life, food security, health problems. All these are the indirect consequences which the civilians suffer. So to cope with this situation, people, statesmen, they have been thinking of devising rules and regulations, how to prevent or at least alleviate this plight of the civilians, the non-combatants. Excuse me, just I want. In fact, the subject of human rights, it has engaged attention only very recently in world history, you know. Of course, religions, scholars, they talked of human rights, but there were no practical steps taken to evolve international law, norms, or the institutions to implement those rules and regulations. And it was in the Hague Conventions, you know, 1899 and 1907, that effort was made to humanize warfare. That, of course, there will be casualties, sufferings, but how to reduce the impact, particularly on the non-combatants. But you will be surprised to, I think you already know, that when the first international organization, League of Nations, was established, not much talk of human rights, only maintenance of peace, security. And it was only when United Nations Charter was adopted that the international community took cognizance of human rights. So much so that it is an important subject, and there is a institution in Human Rights Council, you know, which follows up this subject. And of course, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the conventions, civil, political rights, economic and social rights, all these are now part of the international law. But you know, as has been rightly explained, that these laws are there, but they are being applied in a self-serving manner. Article 51 of the right of self-defense, it can be used for any aggression, as is we have seen, you know, what happened in Iraq, what happened in Syria. It is all right of right of self-defense. Is it so? So this, what we are seeing is a gradual erosion of these norms and rules and regulations. Not only by such self-serving interpretations of Article 51 on self-defense, but also the use of cyberspace, outer space, misinformation, disinformation, all are weakening these attempts at regulating human rights. And it is in this context that we have reviewed the Operation Sindoor and seen that here also a massive blatant violation of international law has taken place. But again, India is justifying on the very same instruments which are meant to check these violations. You know. And what's also another important aspect is that India is copycatting, you know, the Israeli model. What Israel did in Iran or Palestine, same India is using the same policies and practices in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and also during the Operation Sindoor. So this is a ongoing, evolving challenge, in fact, for the international community, how to protect the non-combatant civilians during any conflict. And also there is need to institute strict accountability for violation of these rules. Of course, many proposals have been made by the distinguished speakers, what course of action Pakistan can adopt, starting from approaching various international legal forums. But there are many obstacles in that, not only legal but political also. So I think I would conclude by just thanking all of you for being part of this very educative discourse on a very important subject. And I particularly thank the panelists, and also Mr. Sufi for gracing this occasion, And we must acknowledge the pioneering role which Mr. Sufi has taken in raising the awareness of the importance of international law and also taking some practical steps by establishing laws which are devoted to international law.
Very much.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request a guest of honor, panelists, as well as the co-host, Amar Jahangir Saab and team India Study Center to join us for the group photo. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Please join us for the refreshments as well.